You can seal that if you want.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, Randy, how are you? Good to see you. David, David. Sure.
call you corporation council. That's important. This is a workshop. We got school board in due by every February. So we reached out to before we went back because we have to see if we can. I'll just call it. Thank you very much.
One could see where someone
I
could miss.
I believe you were involved the last time. You're listening on the paperwork. But we have to have those done in the federal
Soup. Like clam chowders. I don't like clam chowders, so I think it's gross. Okay. Maybe split pea and ham is a better example. Like, I don't know. I like it.
It's time.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the St. Clair, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Workshop on Economic Development to order. May we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Angie?
Present.
Commissioner Beeden?
Present.
Commissioner Trello?
Present.
Commissioner Felix?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Vandemont?
Here.
Chairperson Samasco?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a workshop to help determine if St. Clair County should continue to use the services of the Economic Development Alliance of St. Clair County Corporation, and in what form that service should look like. I anticipate that we will need 3 workshops. The first, to look at any issues or problems with the current arrangement. The second, to discuss potential ideas and solutions to improve upon the arrangement. And the third, to decide what solutions the board may want to examine deeper and move to a Board of Commissioners meeting. Tonight, we are at step 1 with this first workshop, identifying any issues or problems with the current arrangement. I'm asking that we try to hold this topic in an interest of time. I'm also asking that the audience please refrain from applause for the same reason. The issue today before us is not the quality of the EDA services, but the focus is on how those services are being delivered into communities and if any issues exist with the delivery of those services. I'd like to read a letter from Chair Steve Samasco, who's not able to be here tonight. I have been dealing with a serious health issue with one of my daughters that delivered a baby on the 13th of December. She is still at a hospital in Detroit. Due to circumstances beyond my control, I will be with her at the hospital this afternoon and will be unable to attend the workshop today. As I stated in a previous email, as board chair, it will be my general practice to give all members of the community or commission an opportunity to chair county workshops and town hall meetings on a case-by-case basis. Commissioner Felix will chair the workshop this afternoon in his capacity as the chair of the Standing Committee on Community and Economic Development. I want the board and the public to know that I am not in favor of the county defunding economic development. I view economic development as a valuable and necessary component of county government. Our county currently funds that entity with an excess of $300,000 annually in direct cash dues plus substantial in-kind services from the Metro Planning Department, County Finance Department, and other in-kind services. The citizens of this county are providing half of the revenues for what is a non-governmental agency managed by a private board with no elected official directly responsible to the public. And that's a statement from Commissioner Samasco. I have a brief introduction. Well, let's just go right to the next step because Commissioner Samasco kind of said it all at that point. At this time, I'd like to ask the board if there's any objection to switching citizen comments with Mr. Casey's presentation. That was suggested by our corporate counsel. Is that all right if the presentation goes first? Do we need to make a motion, or everybody okay with that?
I believe what you're asking, Bob, is that we make item number 5, and make number 5 number 4, if that's what you're requesting.
That's right, Mr.
I would
Casey
make a
goes
motion
first.
to change the agenda from new business to item 4, and from item 4 to number 5, citizens wishing to address the board.
Support.
Do we need a roll call or just a show of hands? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Casey to go ahead and make his presentation, and afterwards, there will be opportunity for questions from the commissioners. Mr. Dan Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. We have an open seat over here, and I don't know if we have any over there, but if anyone wants to sit down, please take a seat. Well, thank you for the opportunity to do a presentation on the EDA, who we are, and what we do. I think it's important, especially for people in the audience that aren't familiar with our organization. We were formed in 1952 as the Port Huron Industrial Council. Initially, there were 3 municipal members of that council. It was for purposes of serving Port Huron Township, and Marysville. It was 100% privately funded initially back in 1952. That changed in 1999 when the EDA was formed. The Economic Development Alliance was basically reincorporated with a mission of serving the entire county instead of just those 3 communities. So from 1999 to the present time, we've been serving the entire county and all the communities. During that long period, that 72 years of existence, EDA has been asked or needed to make changes with the times. Those times sometimes involve politics. Most often they involved the economy and how the economy was shifting. And other times it was as new initiatives were coming into play. So we are familiar with change. One of the things that we try to do as an organization is to look forward and to anticipate where we're going, where the economy's going, and how we need to shift our programs to keep up with it. So for example, when the Great Recession hit back in 2009, economic development groups shifted to a mode of diversification and assisting companies with either diversifying their customer base or diversifying the products that they served or the industry that they served. And so that was an effort, and then of course we came out of that later on and we shifted again. So today we're kind of where we are as an organization based on where the economy currently is and where we see it going. But we make changes as necessary. So the EDA is formed as a 501c6 nonprofit corporation. So we're private. We also have a 501c foundation that was formed a couple of years ago. That is far and away the most common method that economic development is delivered to communities across the country. It's also true in Michigan. There's only a handful of government-based county economic development organizations. There are some cities that have economic development staff. I was one of them for 12 years. I worked for the city of Southfield and later for the city of Rochester Hills before I took this job. So I'm very familiar with the government model of economic development and its strengths and its weaknesses. And of course, now I'm very familiar with private model, nonprofit model of economic development. So here's the EDA's mission statement. I'm going to show you that in the vision statement. The mission statement changed 2 years ago when we developed a new strategic plan. I'm not going to read it to you, but basically our mission has been the same ever since we were formed. And the mission is about prosperity. It's about creating prosperity for residents, companies in the community, and communities themselves. That's what our programs are directed to do. We do that by attracting new investment to the county and to communities, which helps them provide services to the community, and also attracting jobs. Jobs are very important in the economy and how they run. These days, we focus on jobs that pay livable wages. So we're not necessarily after plastic manufacturing jobs anymore. Now we're after jobs that pay higher wages to people so that it can improve your living standard in the county. Here's the vision statement. The vision statement very closely mirrors what I just told you. And so again, you know, we have a vision that we will have a balanced economy by 2030. What we mean by that is our economy is very heavily manufacturing based. It's not as diverse as it should be. We don't have the balance in it. So when we do have a slowdown in the economy, it affects us from an employment-based standpoint quite badly, right? So we need a more diversified economy. So that's one thing the EDA in the new strategic plan is focused on, is attracting or helping to grow businesses that will diversify the economy. Now what I'm going to do is touch on the focus areas that are in our strategic plan. So these are like divisions of the work of the EDA, and I'll touch a little bit about some of the programs, some of the ways that we deliver that service. First and foremost, in economic development, business retention and expansion is far and away the area where you get the most benefit, the most economic impact. And this is true, this is a national statistic. 80% of the impact that we generate for this county comes from our existing businesses expanding and growing. So we have a very robust program that we manage. Bruce Seymour is here, he's right there. Bruce's job is to run that program. He's the vice president of the EDA. Bruce has a long history of doing that. I had a long history of doing that prior to coming to the EDA. And we meet with 120 companies each year at a minimum. Those companies typically are the biggest employers in the county, but we'll also meet with anybody, any business, at any time if they have an issue, if they need our help. So even though we have a program where we meet with 120 defined companies every year, we actually meet with a lot more than that. But those are the companies, those 120 are the companies that make the biggest impact by job creation and the existing jobs that they have. There's a number of things that we do in our business retention program that are important and help businesses. The first is each year we do a wage and benefit survey. I'm not going to bore you with all details on how these programs work, but basically the wage and benefit survey is completed by companies in our county, and if they complete the survey, they get it for free. If they don't, they have to buy a copy. But basically they use that wage and benefit survey to look at the benefits they're offering and how that compares to others in the region, right? Secondly, their wages. We break down job classifications across all industries. So they can look at production workers, for example, and see what the starting wage is on average in the county compared to what they pay. And then they can make adjustments as they need to. So that's a very important document that we produce every year. Some of the things that we do in addition to meeting with companies is we provide assistance to them. And the assistance varies dramatically in terms of what they might need. So it could start with something as simple as, hey, I need to find someone to move a press off of my production floor. Do you know anybody that does that? And we have a whole network of companies that we will send that request to if we don't have the answer. And those companies then submit back the answers to us, who they use, and we share that with the company. And this works great. We usually get responses back to the company from their inquiry within 48 hours. So that's just one example of how we assist companies. There's a lot of other ways that we do, and it all depends on what their needs are at any time. When the Blue Water Energy Center project was being constructed in China Township, or East China Township, that was the DTE new plant, they had all kinds of needs. You know, they needed a rail line or rail yard, a rail spur at one point to help offload some equipment that they needed to install at the plant. So we would help them find that service, find that rail line and who the person who is that owned it, and connect them. So that's a lot of what we do. I like to tell people that what EDA is and what we do in economic development is we're a resource of resources. So we may not have the answer, but we know the people who do. So that's part of our job, is to help those companies get those answers. We also do training programs throughout the year, all kinds of training programs. Sometimes they're very specific to what's needed at the time. So recently, in this picture, for example, this was a fairly recent training program that we had on the new paid leave and minimum wage law. We brought in an attorney those are all businesses that are in attendance at this, learning how that law might impact their business. So that's just one example. I want to touch on the COVID epidemic for a minute, if I could. When that occurred, businesses were going to be shutting down. There was a flood of information going out there, but there was no central depository where companies could find that information. So EDA took on the challenge of doing that. And on our website, we created pages around COVID, and we started sending emails out to all of our businesses around the county on everything that came out. Anything that we thought was relevant to them, we sent it out as soon as we got it. We got so good at it that DTE was doing the same thing. They stopped doing that, and instead they started forwarding our emails to all of their companies in Metro Detroit. That's how good of a job we were doing. Later, as COVID continued, it was impacting and shutting down a lot of businesses. Most businesses were, forced to close for different reasons. And different entities, different organizations sought us out to manage grant programs to help keep these small businesses alive. And so during COVID, we managed about $2.5 million in grants that went out to businesses. And let me tell you, that's a lot of work. You have to come up with a way to evaluate everybody's needs and pick who gets the money, who doesn't get the money. So it's not fun to do that, because a lot of companies didn't get funded because we didn't have the money available for it. But we did the best we could. And the whole point of it was to try to help keep businesses alive during that very difficult time. The EDA staff worked all the way through COVID. They never stopped. Right? So thank you to the staff. They're all sitting up front. The whole community should thank you for the work you did during that time. One of the things that we did later, toward the end of COVID, is a program called Shop, Dine, and Win. So the problem is some businesses were starting to open up, but companies were afraid to go out. They didn't want to go eat at a restaurant or stop at a shop, and so businesses were struggling to pay their bills. So we did a Shop, Dine, and Win competition from one end of the county to the other end of the county. We put out billboards, we had partners that were helping us, and we were basically giving out gift cards to people that they could spend at those shops, right? So that helped to drive traffic, people coming out of their homes and going back out to shop again. So that's just a couple of examples of things that we've done in our business retention and expansion program. Okay. I'm going to move on to attraction. So economic development is really known for doing attraction. That's where you usually get the big wins, right? Usually. So you may not get a lot of attraction projects, but they have the potential to have a huge economic impact. The Magna project in St. Clair is such an example. The Magna plant, which you see there on the left and some pictures on the right, that's a 1.1 million square foot building. It's the second largest building in the county, second only to the Mopar plant in Marysville, which is 1.1 million or 1.2 million square feet. So clearly one of the biggest projects to ever happen in the county. $750 million investment, initially 800 jobs with a forecast to go to 1,200 jobs, and then later they upped it to 1,400 jobs. Right now they're at around 800 jobs and expected to grow. So when you look at that and the stories that came out of that, what's the impact? It's not just tax revenue, that's obvious. It created a tremendous amount of tax revenue for all of the taxing jurisdictions. Parks, seniors, veterans, the library, everybody benefited from that project, okay? But the real impact was what it did to workforce and what it did to wages in the county. So a lot of people, 40% of our working population in this county commutes somewhere else to work every day outside of the county. What Magna did was created an opportunity for people to work close to home, making the same kind of wages that they're making in Detroit or Troy or one of those other communities. And there are plenty of stories out there of people who were working in those communities and making that commute every day that were able to eliminate that so that they could spend more time at home with their families, right? And doing other things, recreating and so forth, shopping and whatever. So that's another one of those impacts. And then a third impact that people always forget about is the spin-off impact. What does that do outside of what Magna's doing, outside of their investment and their jobs? And there's a 3-to-1 impact for manufacturing in this country. So that means for every one manufacturing job, there's 3 jobs created by other industries as a result of that. 3-to-1. The same thing for investment, right? So within a week of the announcement of the Magna plant, 2 companies made an announcement in the newspaper that they were going to be building subdivisions in and around the plant. That's part of what I'm talking about. That's part of the impact of that project. The other thing that it did is Magna came in at $3 over the average starting production wage in this county. $3 over. So what that did is that helped to drive up wages of other manufacturers because they had to compete for that talent or they were going to lose it. So overall, the impact on the county was tremendous, right? You think about what a $3 raise means for a family. That's great. So that's one of the reasons why we work on projects and do attraction work, is to bring in these impact projects like that. Projects come to us a lot of different ways in attraction. The first and obvious way is the phone rings. Somebody out there either buys a piece of property or they're looking at a piece of property, or they're looking to us to help them find a building or a piece of property. And so we get calls all the time. Sometimes they're referrals from people in this county who told them, hey, call the EDA, they can help you, right? So we get a lot of projects just from that. We also do a little bit of prospecting ourselves, where we go out to Canada, for example, or other places in the country to trade shows, and we meet with companies and we try to find those that are looking to possibly expand or relocate, but mainly expand, because we don't like taking jobs from other communities anywhere in the country. So we look really for those expansion opportunities, and they have to fit. They have to make sense for St. Clair County, right? And so that's what we do. That's what we're looking for. And I talked about diversification, and that's part of our strategy, is to find companies in certain industries that would help us to diversify. So we do a lot of that on our own, but we also get calls from real estate brokers from all over the country. We get calls from site consultants. Site consultants work for companies on the site selection process. So especially big companies will hire site consultants to do the search for them using their parameters. And so we get calls from site consultants. A big source of leads comes from the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. There is a whole process that the MED has set up to distribute those opportunities to the economic developers in Michigan. we receive all of those. It's our job to respond if we have a site that we think makes sense. Now, we don't do that on our own. I know some people out there think we do. We don't. When there's an opportunity like that, we contact the community where the site is or the building is, and we ask them, are you okay with this? Is this a project that you would like us to go after? And if their answer is no, we don't submit for that site. We don't submit that site. So this is important because we get anywhere from 40 to 90 of these leads per year. Now the process, you wouldn't even believe. We got one yesterday from the state for a big project, 1 day turnaround. We had to submit in 1 day. Fortunately, we didn't think that project was a good fit for the county. So we are kind of the first layer when these opportunities come in. We're the first layer to determine whether it makes sense for the county based on what we know about your sites, the community sites and community buildings. We start with that. And we know some communities just won't accept certain kinds of projects. So MEDC, there's another organization called the Detroit Regional Partnership that does only attraction. They don't do business retention, nothing else. They only do attraction. They do it globally. It's also, they're formed just like we are. They're founded or funded by foundations and by lots and lots of companies and also communities. Every county, all 8 counties, contribute funding through their economic development agencies to them. And so they generate a lot of leads that also come to us that we respond to. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that the utility companies contact us with opportunities too. Sometimes it's DTE or Sumco, but usually it's DTE. And so our responsibility again is to decide if that project, whatever it is, whether that makes sense and whether we have a site or building that would work. And then it's to submit. Sometimes they include spreadsheets. I'd like to be able to talk about this in a future workshop, by the way, and actually show you examples of the spreadsheets and these emails that come in with these opportunities. I think that would be very educational for people to understand the different stages of development. Anyway, so the spreadsheets can be very simple. They can be submit the real estate brochure for the property, and then we want you to list the owner's name, the broker's name, the contact information, number of acres, and community name. And so we submit that. But other times, for projects, they might have 100 data points in these sheets. 100 data points. There is no way in heck the EDA is going to be able to answer all of those questions on any given site. So we contact the local communities because, guess what? They have the information on a lot of those questions. And if they don't, we also contact the utilities. DTE has to answer some questions, Semco Energy, the gas company, sometimes it's fiber optics, it's all kinds of questions. Transportation costs, it's all across the board. And so there's a lot of work that goes into submitting for some of these projects, right? And they don't give us much time to submit. The average is anywhere from 3 days to 10 days to submit a response. And if you have multiple sites, you have to fill the spreadsheets out for every site. So this just gives you an idea of what's involved in business attraction. We also do community development. We're very proud of doing community development. The organization before I came here really didn't do much in this way. But I came from local economic development, so we did everything, right? We did community development, we did entrepreneurship, we did the whole thing. So when I came here, I said, we need to start helping our communities with their needs. So here's some examples of what we do: infill development in downtown. So that's when you have a lot that hasn't been built in the downtown somewhere. We'll help identify companies. So for example, in Port Huron, you have Desmond Landing along the waterfront. So we help to market that property and find developers to develop it. Building revitalization is tremendously important because you'll get vacant buildings that just sit there and they deteriorate and they don't provide any value or any jobs to the community. And then at some point, a developer comes along and calls us and says, hey, I've got an idea for or how we can repurpose that building, do you think the community will support this? We call the community and we invite them to the meeting, or we'll, answer questions on behalf of the community on that. A lot of times they are looking for economic tools to assist them because these redevelopment or revitalization projects always have gaps that the private sector ordinarily wouldn't have to pay if they were going to build a new building. But because it's an old building, they've got to do more things like potentially replace HVAC or brownfield cleanup, things like that that they wouldn't have with a greenfield site. And so there's always these gaps, and that's why economic development tools exist in Michigan, to fill those gaps. It's our job to know how those programs work and to approach the local community to find out whether they would support using them or not. And if the answer is no, that's fine. We tell the developer, and it's up to them whether they want to pursue the project or not. So revitalization is huge. Some examples, right next door to this building is the Wrigley Center, which was a one-story former art band building that the county bought because it sat vacant for quite a while. The county eventually bought it. They were going to demolish it and turn it into a parking lot. And then a developer came along and said, hey, I've got an idea. That building is built so that you can add levels to it. So why don't we turn part of it into an apartment building? And then we can keep the lower floor and turn that into retail space. Maybe the farmer's market could go in there. So that was a good example where there were a lot of economic development tools that were used to revitalize that property. If you look at it today, it looks amazing, right? And all of the apartment units were rented out before they even opened. Right? So there was so much demand for those apartments anywhere really in the county that they were able to fill them very quickly. Another thing we do is communities call us looking for assistance with grants. These are usually grants to do public works-based projects. And so what we do is we will help to connect them to the granting organizations, whoever they are, whether they're federal or state or otherwise. So we provide that assistance. We also assist local communities with understanding how these economic development tools work. And another thing that we do, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later, is we provide letters of support for communities that are looking for these grant programs. We will get a letter of support, and we also reach out to other partners to get letters of support from them too. And it makes a huge difference when they submit. So for example, the college, the Human Services building, before it was repurposed, they were seeking a state grant for that, and they asked for letters of support. We've sent that out, and we were able to gather numerous letters of support. They submitted their application to the state. Guess what? It was the only application that the legislature looked at that had letters of support. So it got funded. So that's one example of something that we do. Urgent call, Dave?
Matt Williams.
Okay.
I forgot to turn it on.
It could be urgent. Moving on, small business growth and development. The EDA has been doing small business development for a long time, but not doing it when I first came to the organization, they weren't doing it very well. They had basically a half-time person that was counseling businesses and doing a few training programs, and that was about it. But that was good. I was glad that they were doing that. But in my career, I was very involved in writing an application for a Smart Zone designation in the city of Southfield at the beginning of the Smart Zone program. So that would be back in 2001. And the city of Southfield got that designation. Later, Automation Alley came to me and said, would you consider extending that into the city of Troy? Well, the city of Troy was a top competitor for Southfield in the office market. So that was a big ask. And so I went to the city fathers and talked to them about it. They were willing to do it. And so we did. And that's why Automation Alley ended up building a building in the city of Troy. And they were very entrepreneurial focused. Later, when I moved to Rochester Hills, I helped Oakley University establish OU Incubator, which was the university's first ever incubator. And then later, I provided some assistance with Sterling Heights with the incubator out there that they created under that same program. So when I came to the EDA, I really believed that, and I still very firmly believe today, that what entrepreneurship does for a community is it creates your next generation of businesses. We just need to give them a helping hand, right? And so EDA accelerated what we do, and back in 2017, we opened up the underground incubator in Port Huron, and then about a year and a half ago, we opened up a second incubator in the city of Port Huron building. So we're now running 2 incubator operations. And we created a pre-seed fund, which was partially funded with our own money, but mainly was funded by the Community Foundation and banks that are partners of EDAs. And so we were able to get, on average, from $20,000 to $50,000 per year that we could invest in companies to help them launch their businesses. And they were primarily technology companies. So in 2023, toward the end of the year, the MEDC received a large grant from the Federal Economic Development Administration. And they put out an RFP to all the economic development agencies and other similar agencies in the state, asking for applications to create small business support hubs. Basically, their vision was they wanted to take things like we had and expand them out to a larger geographic area, and then provide more funding so that we could do more good work. And so we applied, we wrote a proposal. Our proposal was very heavily focused on collaboration with other partners. And we were awarded $2.5 million to create a 6-county regional hub called the Small Business Support Hub. From that, we received the approval at the end of 2023. We received the grant agreement early in 2024. I think it was in February, and then we received the first batch of money in March. Well, because we already had our other program in place, we already had a basis to work from. But what was scary about that is we're an economic development agency. If we start working in another county, how are those economic development agencies going to work with us? Are they going to think of us as competition? So we had a lot of work to do, and we worked with them and said, we're going to put you front and center, not us. We worked with the Small Business Development Center. We worked with 2 foundations and others. And we did a quick analysis of what is needed in this region to really catalyze entrepreneurship. And what we found is there was a lack of business counselors. Huron and Sanilac counties had no dedicated counselors. Tuscola and Lapeer counties, no dedicated counselors. Shiawassee County had a half-time position. So the first thing we said with the grant is we're going to fund 2.5 positions for the SBDC. So basically, they're a sub-grantee, and they submit quarterly invoices to us, and we provide funding so that they can fund those positions. The second thing that we did is we set up a service provider network. We have about 25 companies in that network who are accounting firms, legal firms, marketing firms, some specialty firms, and others. They're scattered geographically around the region. I knew that companies weren't going to drive from Shiawassee County to St. Clair County to meet with an accountant. So we did that, we set that up, and then we have a large pool of funds that we can distribute to companies that are going through our program to tap into that network. And the goal was simple, and I know I'm going into some detail, I apologize, but the goal was this is what we spent all last year working on, so I think it's important for you to hear it. So the goal was we wanted startup companies to be able to tap into that network, to get their business established, to learn how to create, to get accounting software and learn how to use it, and how to create financial statements. We wanted them to be able to get basic marketing materials. So if they didn't have a website, they could use the money to get a website set up, business cards, and a basic brochure. At a minimum, that's what we wanted to use it for. Some companies are using it for patents and other things. So we set that network up. It's working amazingly well. It could be better, but it's working amazingly well. We don't give the money directly to the companies, to the startups. Instead, the the service providers invoice us and we pay them directly. Companies have to fill out a work plan at the beginning of all of this. And the services they want, they have to be approved by their business counselor before they can apply for funding. So we set all of that up. And then lastly, we also managed about $213,000 in business grants across the region last year. $60,000 of that money went to St. Clair County businesses. So we also did that. So there is a lot of work that we've been doing with entrepreneurship. This year it's going to slow down a little bit because we got all the programs set up. Now we're just maintaining them. Okay, one of the other focus areas is marketing. So we market the county, we market sites in the county as part of our job. We also manage a foreign trade zone. It's foreign trade zone number 210, which is based in, the actual zone is based in Port Huron and partially in Marysville, but we can establish subzones anywhere within a 60-mile radius, so it goes into other counties as well. And so that's one of the things that we do, and we market that for companies that are looking for access to foreign trade zones to store products or goods or to do certain types of manufacturing. We do a lot of other things marketing-wise, like billboards. We do radio, earned media we call it, which is basically free. We try to get free publications, free marketing, whatever we can, any way we can. We have our own monthly newsletter that we put out. Anybody can sign up for it. And of course, we have our own social media, and we do a lot of postings. We manage more than one social media channel, and we have 3 websites that we maintain, so it's a lot of work. Lastly, myself, yours truly, is doing a podcast on economic development for the Thumb region. I think we're up to our 55th show currently. And all of that's available on Spotify and all the usual places. So on the podcast, we focus on economic development trends, companies, startup companies, and providers. So we talk to everything from the hospitals to nonprofits to the DDA, to all kinds of people related in any way to economic development. You can never do enough marketing, and I wish we had a bigger budget, but it is what it is. We do the best we can. The next focus area we have is workforce development and talent attraction. I don't think it's a secret that for the last few years, our labor force has been very tight. We've had one of the lowest unemployment rates in the state for the last 2 or 3 years. We've been, one time last year, we were among the 4 lowest in the state among counties for unemployment rate. It's been averaging around 4 to 4.2%. Just in this last month, we just got the report, it went up to 5%. That's not unusual at the end of the year because all those outdoor jobs, temporary jobs, things like that, seasonal jobs they call them, always boost the unemployment rate at the end of the year and into January, so that happens. So we're currently at 5%. Part of what we do is we help companies with their workforce needs. Whether it's we're adding new jobs and we need help finding people, or the worst case, we're closing our plant. And that happened to us twice in the last year or year and a half. One of them was Dun Paper. I almost said Domtar. It was Dun Paper, and another was Dana Corporation. So in those cases, what we do is we work with Michigan Works, and we quite often will do reverse job fairs. We'll also do regular job fairs, but a reverse job fair happens when a company is closing their doors and all their people are going to be losing their jobs. And what we do with the company's permission is we will bring other companies into the plant, and we allow all those employees to basically filter among the tables to meet those companies to identify whether they have job openings that might fit their skill set. So it's basically matchmaking. Michigan Works does a lot of the work on that. We also do training programs like how to write a resume, how to interview, things like that. In the case of like Dun Paper, some of the employees have been there for over 20, 30 years, and they hadn't tried to find a new job in forever, so we had to help them. So we do that. On our website, we have a page called the Hot Jobs page, which is jobs that we post that pay livable wages and above. Basically, I think it's $40,000 and up, $40,000 jobs and up, any type of company, anywhere in the county, and then we promote that through social media, digital advertising, and with billboards. And it's been very helpful. So people driving into town, like during Boat Week this past year, we had a billboard up intentionally, so as people were driving into town, they could see that billboard, they could click on a QR code, go right to the Hot Jobs page and look for jobs in St. Clair County. That's one way to attract talent to come back to an area. We also have a committee that we run called Workforce Task Force, which is made up of Michigan Works, it's the Macomb St. Clair Michigan Works office, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, MEDC, RISA, and SC4. And we meet monthly, and we work on projects. Any kind of workforce-related project, whether it's a company that is adding jobs and they might need help from Michigan Works, for example, or it's job training programs. There's one out there called the Going Pro Talent Fund. It's a state program that's competitive, and so we assist through that partnership. We assist companies in applying for those funds. So I just want to point that out too. No, I thought this was going to be 15 minutes. I need to talk faster. So I just want to touch on community involvement for a second. All of the EDA staff are involved in communities in one way or another. They serve on boards or committees. They do speaking engagements at Rotaries, chambers, different events all around the county, sometimes outside of the county, it depends. And we also, there's a countywide strategic plan called Blue Meets Green. I could spend an hour on that. I'm not going to bore you. But Blue Meets Green's been very important to the recovery of the county since the recession, because it creates a process or has a process to identify priority projects in the county that can make a regional impact. And then there are 40 leaders from the public, private, nonprofit sector that meet quarterly, that do updates, and every year and a half we completely update the plan. I bring it up because the EDA administers that work. We administer that, the whole leadership council, their committees, that whole process, we also work with Metro Planning at the county on that. Okay, so here's some of the results of the work. There's a lot of different ways you can parse results. Do you do it in 10 years? Do you do it in 5 years? Do you do it next year? Anyway, so I chose to go with 10-year look back on some results. So since 2015, basically a 10-year period, $3 billion of investment has occurred in the county. That's resulted in 6,300 new jobs. So that's obviously very critical, right, for all of us. That's helped all of us. And then we also have entrepreneurial statistics. So earlier I mentioned the new small business support hub that we launched last year, 2024. 700 companies across the region received at least one service through that program. 40% of those companies are from St. Clair County. I touched on our unemployment rate, so I'm going to skip that. I did want to mention on grant-funded projects, here's some of the projects that we assisted communities with. There are more than this, actually. I just chose to focus on these three. Algonac's community swimming pool was very old and in need of being redone. They approached us and requested a letter of support, so we got some letters of support from other agencies for a RAP grant. We helped them with the answering questions, but quite honestly, Denise Gerstenberg at Algonac did an awesome job of writing the application. So they got $200,000 from the RAP program through the state for a $400,000 project. So that was huge. KPAC, their Main Street and their sidewalks is in need of complete repair, complete replacement, and that's a huge project for a small town. And so we met with them originally to help identify grant programs. They eventually focused on a federal grant, applied for it. We helped with letters of support. They were able to land it. Don't quote me on the number, folks, but I think it was about a $5 million project, which is a huge amount of money for the village of Capac. But that was put out to bid, so it's now going forward with construction. And then lastly, in St. Clair with the Magna project, there was a $10 million of need to update the water system there, and a water main, water pump, and a water tower in support of, it was mostly for Magna, but also to provide additional capacity for St. Clair Township. There were a lot of people involved in this, in the Magna project. A lot of people were involved in that, Mr. Fletcher and others. Quentin Bishop, I don't know if Quentin's still here because I know he had to leave. Quentin, I don't know if you have a minute. Could you come up and maybe talk a little bit about that project and how that came together in the partnership? I think that'd be helpful if people heard from you since you are the superintendent for St. Clair.
Council, corporate council, administrator. My name is Quentin Bishop. I'm the city superintendent for the city of St. Clair. I come from a unique position in that before I was city superintendent, I worked in economic development. And so 2 years ago, I left a position where I was the Carrie Hepting of Lapeer County. And so being the county administrator and controller, we also had a Lapeer Development Corporation. It mimics that of the services of the St. Clair County EDA. I can say equivocally that without the support of the LDC during my term there, we would not have had the projects, we wouldn't have the depth, and we would not have had the successes that we had without the local economic development support. I will talk a little bit about the St. Clair Water Improvement Project, especially about the federal appropriation that we had. But before I do, I couldn't help but hear in Commissioner Chairman Samasco's comments about one of three comments. He's not talking about defunding the EDA, but I will say this, and I would hope it sinks in, is that if there's any talk about or discussions about or considerations to eliminate funding, reducing funding, cutting back funding, making them earn their keep in any type of situation, I think it would be fundamentally wrong, and I think that would not be the step you'd want to take. And I can tell you why. I'll use 3 reasons, and I'll keep my comments brief. Okay, I know you did good, but I'll keep mine really brief. Okay. First one is, back in COVID, he mentioned that he had helped out small businesses. What he failed to mention was this, that in the MEDC world, there was 4 very strategic funding opportunities that came through. The MEDC Relief Grant, the MEDC Restart Grant, the MEDC Survival Grant, and the MEDC Retooling Grant. Those grants all encompass well over $2.53 million worth of incentive and support. Dan's office with his staff was managed that entire grant program. Those were not grant programs that went to large corporations and incentives and big tax abatements. These were mom and pops. These were people on Main Street. These were people in Yale, in Capac. These were people in the townships where they do not have the infrastructure, the industry, or the professional support to take on these projects. If not for those types of professionals, and it all comes down to specialization. If not for the specialization of the EDA, I do not think that most of those companies would have survived the pandemic. It's absolutely a necessity that the smallest businesses, the most vulnerable businesses, the least of these businesses that we have in our county is able then to lean into corporations, nonprofits, support systems that allow them to grow. That is the role of the EDA in that way. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that as we come into a township, or if we come into a scenario where a project is unwanted, I know for a fact, because before coming as county administrator of Lapeer, I was the county, the LDC executive director. I was the Dan of Lapeer County. And so I know that there is a certain sense of vulnerability when it comes to townships wanting to know what is coming in my backyard. How will these people be affected? How will my neighbors be affected? And it's very clear to me that when you have an organization that's willing to support the locals at a heartbeat level, at the level that says what is best for you, and the autonomy and the authority is rested in within the jurisdiction, and the EDA comes alongside them and says, we're here to support you, not control you. I think that's a very important distinction of what they do and how they go about doing it. That's my second point. My third point is this. We had projects in my city, bringing Lake Magna. These are 1,000 jobs. These are life-changing, livable wage jobs, and we need more of them. But with every good thing may become a bad thing. So about the same time, on the eve of launching Magna, we have a business that decides to leave our industrial park. There's 200 jobs on the line. These are 200 jobs. These are 200 moms, dads. These are people who need these jobs. And they cannot afford to drive an hour away to work with the wage that they were living, or for the wage that they were earning to make a living. What they needed to do was be supported. We set up a meeting. Bruce Seymour comes in and says, I'm going to help this corporation find these people jobs. That's a specialization. I don't think many people understand that behind the scenes, the EDA staff is working alongside, hand by hand with people. Bruce comes in and does a remarkable job, sits down with the general manager and the plant manager, and says, how can we help you? Setting up job fairs within the building, helping them move the needle on where every 200 of these people are going to land. That's very important. That's very important. These are people we're talking about. So if it comes to transparency, if it comes to having an open book, if it comes to, we just want to know when you do stuff and how you go about it, if that's the case, I would say work alongside Dan Casey and his staff and figure out a way, because he always finds a way. The EDA for 73 years has found a way. So again, I would say before you consider reducing, eliminating, taking back, I would say look at the people that they have actually helped, and it far outweighs $300,000, by and large. The support that I have received in St. Clair for the water improvements for federal appropriations and the state of Michigan grant is unparalleled. Walking in and having to set up an LDFA, working with the next Michigan Business Development Corporation, and having to work through the nuances and the complexities of those grant applications, I need the EDA. And I'm saying that as a former EDA guy. I need them. I need their support. Reducing funding in any capacity puts real jobs on the line. Real jobs on the line. And if they are not there to do that and they have to take on more burden, what happens is I may not receive the support, therefore my citizens do not receive the resources. That means the small businesses don't receive the resources. I'm a proponent of economic development done the right way. I believe in transparency. I believe in the ability that we can debate and go back and forth and find the best solution. But what is most important is if we count on a single account line that says this amount of money is coming out from the county into the EDA, and we think we're going to reduce that, and we want them to do more with less. In this time that we're operating in, with the cost of doing business, with the requirements of private industries setting some rules in the private world, we have to remain agile. We have to remain flexible. We have to be able to move when the company needs us to move. To hamper that, to reduce that, to put that in jeopardy in any way, shape, or form, limits our ability to grow. So I would just encourage you as you have these workshops, ask questions beyond just the bottom line. Ask a small business that is alive and well today because of the support of the EDA. Ask the townships the support that they do not have a DDA. They do not have a downtown person. They don't have a concierge that's coming in and walking them through hand by hand. That is the role of the EDA.
If I could interrupt you, you're going to keep it brief. We were going to try to make this meeting for 2 hours. We have over an hour worth of speaking.
Yes, sir. I understand.
So if you would, wrap it up, and I don't know how much longer you got,
I would say,
Dan.
and I'll wrap up with my final comment here is this, is that if any perspective is needed, if anybody would like some additional support, letters of support, or from a bird's eye view of how the Economic Development Alliance has helped out the small businesses and the cities like myself and our boards, we're more than happy to share information. I appreciate your time. Sorry I can come long-winded as well, but I think it's very important that we outline the benefits of the EDA and how they supported this county. Thank you.
Thank you.
He didn't actually answer the question about the water tower. I'm going to skip it. Okay, I'm almost done, folks. So these are some of the stakeholders that we do our work for, businesses, obviously, communities, residents, key partners. We have a plethora of organizations around the state and even federally that we work with, that we tap into. So having those connections, knowing those people and what they do, what their programs are, is one of the strengths that you have by working with the EDA. If you bring in someone else, you're going to lose this knowledge base potentially, right? If you were to do that, unless you hired someone who knew absolutely everybody, which seems unlikely. So we have a staff of 7 people with all of their connections, with all of their knowledge, and that's what moves the needle in St. Clair County. Here's just a snapshot of some of our board of directors. Our board is made up of 40 people from the private and the public sector. It includes 9 municipal seats. We have 10 municipal members. The 1 seat that is not filled by one of our townships is because they chose not to have a board seat. So if they wanted one, the offer was there. They just chose not to have it. 2 of those 9 seats are currently vacant because of the election, and they are expected to be filled by the supervisors of those townships. We obviously have a website. We have an annual report. You'll see in the packet that I gave you today, the annual report is in there. That's where our metrics are shown to you from that previous year. So we are very diligent about our metrics and tracking those throughout the year. We work with communities to do that, getting their building reports. So it's a partnership with communities to put that together, but we're very diligent about tracking jobs, retained new jobs, investment that's made across all of those spectrums, whether it's community development, attraction, business retention, or small business development. We put out a weekly email on the activities that we undertook from the previous week in each of those focus areas that I just showed you. That email is sent out to the supervisors and village managers and the city managers of all of the communities in the county. There are a few other people on there as well. We've had some communities who said we want our elected officials to get it. It's actually intended for all of their elected officials, but they do change, and so what we ask is the supervisors and the city managers to forward them to their elected officials. But if they send us the list of their names and emails, we'll include them on the mailing list. So that goes out, and that really touches on the activities that took place in the previous week. A lot of what we work on is confidential, and everything is code-named with a project name. We try to identify what community for each project, whatever it is, and a little bit about what happened, if it was a meeting, if it was something else that occurred. So, almost done. So I just wanted to touch on this for a minute because I've worked in both the government model and the nonprofit model. So I'm very familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of each. They both can work. The nonprofit model, like I said, is by far the most common in the state for a lot of reasons. Ours was set up that way intentionally back in 1952 because it allowed the Economic Development Agency to work outside of government in a manner with the business community that they needed, right? In order to gather information, identify what their challenges were, confidential information on what they're thinking about doing in the future, whatever it is. Some of the advantages are that we can move faster than government can when it comes to things like purchasing. When I worked for the city of Southfield, For example, the city wanted to send 3 people to Japan to cement a project, and it took them a month to get the approval from their city council to buy the plane tickets. I can buy the plane tickets right now if I need to. So that's one example of the difference. The private sector, like I said, they're more willing to share information with us because they know that our job is to keep that confidential until such a time as the public process begins. Then it goes public. And by the way, this isn't always about projects. Sometimes it's just about what's happening with the company at any given time. On the government side, it does expand the role of government. Let's be honest, that's what it does. It adds more jobs to the payroll, more benefits to the payroll, right? And so some people don't like expanded government, they like smaller government. So that's one of the results of it. It is a little bit more costly to do it at the government level because the wages, the benefits in particular, typically are greater at the government level than they are at the nonprofit level. It does slow processes down, doesn't mean they don't happen, but it slows them down. And the trend that we've seen for the last few years is that companies have accelerated the process to make decisions on where they're going to either locate into an existing building or build a new building. That whole process is going much quicker today, faster than government can respond. So that's a bit of a problem, but it is what it is. It's kind of the way the economy is operating today. And then lastly, the government is subject to FOIA, and we're not. We are not part of that FOIA process at all. It doesn't mean that we won't answer questions, but government employees are subject to FOIA. So that is a bit of a weakness in the government model. Now, having said that, I can tell you that the Oakland Planning and Economic Development Department, the Macomb County Planning and Economic Development Department, and Wayne's department, all of them maintain confidentiality. They're all still FOIA'd. And they also sign NDAs for projects. I'm not aware of a single economic development agency in the state of Michigan that doesn't sign NDAs. So there's that. Okay, so here are some proposed changes. I started with that. I'm going to end with that. One of the things that we're proposing is that we enter into a memorandum of understanding with the county, which will identify the changes that we all agree need to be made. Among those changes, we have no problem whatsoever with adding more board seats for the county. Just understand that the previous administration determined how many board seats the county got. Now we have a new administration, so we're certainly willing to add more. We have an executive board as well. Currently, the executive board is full and the terms are up in September. So we would propose to add one of your county representatives, whether it's Carrie or a new representative, to the executive board in September. So those are things that we would definitely agree to. That would include representation on our committees. One of those committees is called Strategy and Growth. So that would be an ideal committee for the county to have representation on, because then you would have even more. You already have direct input into our programs, so you'd have even more if you were on that committee. Board of Commissioner updates. We talked about this. I am always willing to come to the board and give updates. Right? Previously, I didn't, I asked for that. I wasn't given that opportunity, except rarely when there was a particular issue that needed to be addressed. In your last meeting, you had a question about tax abatements on a project that we're working on. I could have answered your questions, but nobody asked me now. So that's fine. But that's an example of if you do these Board of Commissioner updates, I can give you quarterly or however often you want me to do that. NDAs. So we talked about this at the board meeting on Monday. The board, frankly, doesn't understand why we have this issue. However, our partnership with the county is too important to let that hold us up. So if the county insists, we will no longer sign NDAs. That's not what we want, but we'll do it if we have to do it. What we would prefer is something in between that doesn't completely close the door on the possibility of NDAs. It could be some sort of an approval process. I don't know. We haven't discussed exactly what that looks like. I do not actually sign that many NDAs. I've been in this industry for 26 years. I think I probably signed maybe a dozen in 26 years. They're definitely more prominent in the last 2 years than ever before. But I think that's because in the state of Michigan, we have seen some unprecedented large projects that I have not seen before. I mean, billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, hundreds and even thousands of acres of land that are needed for projects. 10 years ago, I never saw anything close to that, right? So I think that's part of it. One thing that cannot change is confidentiality, whether it's an NDA or not. It is inherent in our industry. We have to be able to maintain confidentiality with companies, with real estate brokers, and with site consultants. That does not mean that we won't share information with communities. We do. They're part of our team when we're working on projects. I know some people don't think that's the case, but it is the case. And there are representatives from cities that are here today that will tell you that we absolutely bring them in on every single project. They know. Linda Schweihofer knows. John Golan before her knew. All of our city managers know. Their members, they're happy with their membership. If they weren't, they would drop their membership. But they're not. And they haven't asked for changes either. So they're comfortable with the way things have been. That doesn't mean they have to continue to be that way as we go forward. But you do need to consider their opinions in your decision making. If they want us to sign NDAs, that should be something you think about, right? But confidentiality, regardless, is very important to what we do. Now, we do try to the best that we can, talk about projects with communities so they have the information that they need to move forward and say yes or no on a project. It is not our job to force a community to accept a project. I know some people think that we do that. That is not the case. If a site is zoned industrial and the community denies that project, that company can sue because the community has just broken their own law. And this has happened time after time in the state of Michigan. Communities always lose those judgments. Just about. We know that's the case. So, but we do talk to communities about these projects, even when they say we don't want them, and we're saying, are you sure? Because if you don't want it, that might be something that you could face in the future. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what the company decides to do. So with that, I'm just going to wrap up. Thank everybody for your time today. I know we're going to have Q&A. I don't know if you want to do it now or in the future, but let's go.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan, for that excellent presentation. It is very similar to what I've seen from other EDAs around the country in my years, and that is typical of that function, so appreciate you presenting that. At this time, I'd like to open this to questions from commissioners. Dan, if you would indulge us.
Sure. I might ask for help from some other members of the board that are in attendance. Depends on the question.
Okay, we'll see if you can handle it. Anybody at the board have a question to start with?
I want to be very brief because we've still got about an hour of speakers, so I've got an hour worth of questions. And you're giving your perception of what you do there. I'm going to disagree with a lot that you said. A lot of letters that we received, and I printed out, I believe every one I received. I'm not sure where they got the marching orders, but in a lot of them it said that the public was misinformed or uninformed. And some of the public has come to you and you do not allow public meetings, you do not allow, haven't given them any information on their FOIA. So by not getting the information, you're the one that's giving them the misinformation, in my perception. And part of it, and I'll read from Steve Smasco, one of the things will be that this is what he's going to be submitting, but he's not here today. That if we go forward, that the EDA adopt a formal amendment to their corporate bylaws that requires that entity to voluntarily comply with Michigan Freedom of Information Act and the Michigan Open Meetings Act. With that, I called, which I do, I do my homework, so when I ask you questions, I pretty much know the answers. I called Jim Enders today, and he's with probably the board that refused, town trustee that refused to sit on the board as a member, Ira Township. Well, that's what he told me, so Jim Enders said he did not want to sit on your board, and he does not sit on your board. Okay, but they do fund up $2,500 to your board as a member. They're one of the 10 members. So out of 32 municipalities, you got less than a third of the community that supports EDA. The majority of my townships do not support EDA, and we have members here that maybe want to speak later. When I talked to Jim Enders today, he was not aware that your meetings were not public and that they weren't able to get information from you. So that concerned him. He would like to have that, and you talked to him yourself. I'm giving you a third person, so give him a call too, because he gave very strong support of EDA, and you've done there. 30 new jobs. I'm going to bring up what you brought up earlier. In 26 years, you've done 12 NDAs. That's what you just said.
I said approximately. I didn't go back and count them all.
Okay, which, give it a little bit. Let's say one a year, even 24 in 26 years. That seems to be pretty much of a non-issue if we need to go forward. And that any member that is part of yours board, and I think by us funding you, we become members of that board, and we're bound by the NDA. Corporate counsel can verify that at a later time, Gary. But I believe anybody that is part of your board, whether they're a member or not, they are bound by any NDA. In addition to confidentiality, I know as myself, as a previous supervisor and sitting county commissioner, I would never not tell who put me in office what's going on. I'll give a quick reference to Wales Township. You called me on how the process works on this potential business that's going to go on Wales Center Road, just north of the railroad tracks, on the west side of the tracks. And I gave you the full format. So part of the misinformation, I gave you how it's going to perceive to get this going at the township. You never contact Wales Township. Go ahead.
I think you must be talking about that site readiness project that Liz Matthews brought up last week.
Right, and, well,
Okay.
hold on, we want to get, you'll get a chance to talk.
Is
So,
that what you're referring to, though?
yes, I am.
Okay.
And it's a VIP, and,
Now, hold on.
go ahead.
That is not our program. That's Detroit Regional Partnerships program, not ours. Part of their process is to talk to the local community, and we asked them that question in a meeting, on the kickoff meeting that we were involved in, which is also part of their process. And they said that they would be contacting the local community. That is not our project. And secondly, there is no company going in there right now. That program is meant to get that site more development ready, to make it more attractive. The property owner contacted a real estate broker. The real estate broker knew about that program, contacted Detroit Regional Partnership.
I'm going to disagree with you.
I don't care if you disagree with me. You would be incorrect.
No, you would.
I am not. I can get the Detroit Regional Partnership to come here to answer your question directly.
Come on, let's move on from that point, if we
Correct.
could, please, gentlemen.
The confidentiality, again, that I would not be able to do that for who I represent. And in 14 years, I've been vice chair of the Planning Commission in Riley Township. EDA has not been there once. You have not assisted in a single business that come to our townships. Is that correct? Since you've been there.
That's correct.
And we've had some pretty good
There was
businesses.
one project that happened years ago in that area. We had very little involvement.
Right. Out of the 6 townships, have you done anything in District 6 other than Ira Township that I represent?
China Township.
That's not mine. I have Ira, Casco, Columbus, Wales, Riley, Berlin.
No, we haven't.
Okay. What I'm I'm looking at is we're funding $300,000 plus in-kind services, so it might be closer to $400,000 by the time we get done. Doesn't matter the figure. My district, other than Ira Township, and from Jim Andrews' letter, produced 30 jobs. If that's all that,
There's a lot more than that. He only referenced a couple of projects.
Okay. But, okay, the other 5 townships have not done, EDA hasn't done anything for them. They're not members of EDA, correct?
That's correct.
So what you're asking me is for Commissioner for District 6, possibly the commissioners for Port Huron, they're doing plenty for Port Huron. I'm not aware of it. And I brought that, and I'll try to make this short, because like I said, I can ramble for an hour. I talked to you when you addressed the board prior to, in regards to the industrial park on Dove. And you said all those buildings are filled, and I said, no, they're not. And I drive by there. I'd say 50% or close to 50% are closed.
That is completely incorrect.
All right, you told me that the reason those aren't included is because they're not ready to be opened without substantial upgrades to the building. So you don't include them in your,
Are you talking about the Port Huron Industrial Park?
yeah, off Dove Street there.
Okay, Mr. Freed is here. If you want to ask someone who ought to know, it should be him.
Okay.
But I can
Sure.
tell you right now, that is not true.
Okay, if you could, Jim, at another time, because this meeting has to go on. We're already at 5:20. Huh? Okay, give me a call, because a lot of gates are, the weeds are growing, the parking lots, so if they got the buildings, they're occupied, but not businesses. The railroad spur, could you give me the exact example where that happened?
Yeah, the railroad spur is off of Range Road. Range Court Road, I believe, is technically. It's a privately owned spur. There's a couple of spurs there.
Okay. And I can go on, so that's enough for me.
Any other commissioners have questions for Mr. Casey?
Yes?
Go ahead, Commissioner Beeden.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm sure staff too. Thank you for putting this together for us in the community. I hear what you're saying when there's 10 municipalities that are members, 9 with seats. I'm probably the most fortunate commissioner in that I only have one municipality to deal with, even though it is Mr. Freed. He is my favorite person to deal with. I just like to give him a little shade when I can. But as these projects, what I heard you say and what I wrote down was that these projects, if they call you, they are redirected to then talk to the municipality, regardless of whether they have a membership with the EDA or not.
Yeah, we work on projects in non-member communities with permission of the community, of course, and we also will direct companies to those communities to ask questions if they have any.
And
Quite
so,
often, they want us to be the intermediary instead of themselves.
sure. And so ultimately, the local municipality has control to decide what businesses they would like to entertain in their municipality.
The approval process is always a public process. The communities are never in any way replaced or unable to say no if they don't want to approve a project.
So it would be up to like those municipalities to then communicate to their citizens what's coming or communicate with their boards so that their citizens know what's coming in their neighborhood.
That's correct. I just want to make one quick point. Our normal contact person with a community is the city manager, the village manager, or the township supervisor. I don't see it as our responsibility to reach out to all of the elected officials every time there's an opportunity. That has been our protocol in the past, is to go through the person who manages that administration for those communities.
Sure.
And their job to then discuss it with whoever they need to on their administration team.
I guess I'm just looking for confirmation that the goal is local control. That
Yes.
the local municipalities have a say
I worked
in
for
what
the private,
comes.
or for the public sector for 40 years, my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
I am strongly in favor of local control.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Beeden. Any other commissioners have a question for Mr. Casey? I asked again, and go ahead.
No, I say I'm all set. We've got a lot to go through yet.
Any other commissioners? Okay, well, Mr. Casey, I have a few. When I won the primary in August, you reached out, congratulated me, and I appreciate that. And then we got together in October. We go back a little bit farther than that. When I was campaigning in June of 2023, I contacted you, and I asked about FOIAs, and we talked briefly on the phone about, who the EDA works for, and, and in my opinion, it's the community, and I think you're showing that right here. So that's excellent. And again, I want to emphasize, I don't have an issue with the quality of your work and your employees and what you do. For me, that is not the issue. When we talked in October, if you remember when I walked in the door in your boardroom, I said, Mr. Casey, the public thinks you're public enemy number one. And you said you don't deserve that, and I agreed, but image is what you're fighting. Right now, there's certain communities, we could roll a Good Humor ice cream truck out there if they still have those, and people would say, no, we don't want that. The solar debacle that the state has put on us has accelerated that. People have confusion between what the solar and the state has mandated and then what you're bringing in. But what I'm seeing and hearing from the different townships and the communities you serve that like the service and are benefiting, that's great. But the townships that you're going to hear from here a little bit later, they're having an issue feeling that projects are being forced on. And Mr. Freed called me up Friday after the Thursday board meeting, and I appreciate that. And we went through quite a bit. He has some strong opinions, and I do appreciate those. I love an opposing opinion because that's when you learn. But one of the things he said to me is that, under the state law, when it's zoned correctly and that company comes there, that's it, you're done. Well, the problem is maybe because of the fast pace private industry is now dictating, a lot of these communities, what I've been told, they don't even understand what's being promoted. And because of some of the confidentialities and NDAs being foisted on you by the industry, it can't be disclosed. So they're expected to make a decision, change zoning in some cases. There will be people here that will testify they were requested to do that. And to Mr. Freed's point, once that's done, they've given away the farm. So that is an issue. So what I have here, what I've seen, and again, in this workshop, we're trying to point out problems and issues. I don't have an issue with what your company does, but I do have an issue with the visuals and the overall image. Here's an example where the EDA is actually hurting the business community. And I was a corporate person and knew many CEOs. There's CEOs that want to move their company here. And when they start thinking of that, they've got a lot of people looking at things. And they look at Facebook, and they look at videos, and they look at YouTube postings, anything they can learn, right, about the area. And what they see is meeting after meeting where the people that are opposed to economic development come out, and they're asking their own internal people, hey, do we really want to move into St. Clair County? Let's look somewhere else. I don't know if they may not tell you that, but as a guy that worked with CEOs, I can guarantee you a hostile environment with the people does not benefit the economic development. So that is a problem, and that is not your fault. But again, the image, the communication, that's what I'm looking to improve on. Now, I'll give you an example, and it's unfortunate. We talked earlier in the week, and you talked about, what things you could cover, and I said anything, and you invite whoever you want. So I think that's great, and you did so. I heard you on WPHM, good interview, by the way, and also you put an email out, very nice email, EDA members and partners. There's one part in there that still troubles me because I think it conveys the problem. There will be members of an anti-growth group in attendance, please be quiet, and they will be speaking against EDA. Most of what these folks say is misinformation or just outright wrong. Now, maybe they have misinformation and maybe they're wrong, but these people aren't anti-growth, Mr. Casey. They are trying to protect their quality of life, and they're trying to protect their homes. And I've seen that over and over in communities. And when that happens, that becomes everybody's problem. From the CEO in another town that wants to locate here, your business, local businesses, when you have people out that are being labeled anti-growth, I know for a fact they want growth. They want it controlled, and they don't want it in their backyard. Now, let's look at that. Not in my backyard. If they don't want it in their backyard, one should ask themselves why. And they should ask, why should they have it in their backyard, and why shouldn't it be in your backyard? And the challenge is to make it so it's acceptable. Solar is a big issue that Mr. Casey can't control. So I want to get that out there right now. But the rest of the businesses, the mega centers, the data centers, as far as I've seen, nobody has data centers in their zoning. I may be wrong because it changes. Of the 32 municipalities, most of that is going to fall on the rural areas. Rural areas like their lifestyles. That's something that, being from the city, you may not quite appreciate. People have moved to those areas for that lifestyle. So what I'd like to say as we move forward, I would propose the problem is not what the EDA is doing. It's a fine organization. I've met a lot of your staff, great product. The improvement has to be communication, transparency, and I did ask you that to talk to those issues. And then how do we let townships know that they do not have to accept this before it turns into a big 80-person meeting like down in China Township over a data center. That was a 75,000 square foot building that was going to go next to a church. Sounds okay. Data centers have a cooling system to vent all that power, the 1,000 megawatts of power they consume, and they're noisy. And they don't get customers, so typically it's not a beautiful building. Quite frankly, around the country, data centers, a lot of them have a deserved bad reputation. Some don't. But the problem is, when you have an NDA or confidentiality, we can't tell. Last thing I want to cover, and I hope I've put a little bit of focus on what the problem might be. I'm gonna take a moment. When I made the motion to suspend this first quarter funding, I did so for a reason. Dan Casey is very good at what he does. Jeff Bohm is very good at what he does. He's on that board as vice president, correct? The two of you together, I figured, would be unmovable and getting some type of compromises. Now, maybe that was a rash decision. I don't think so. So that's why I thought, let's bring everybody to the table. Let's catch everybody's attention. The mere fact that this board put forth a brand new committee on Community and Economic Development should assure everybody we're going to take this seriously and do it right for the community, which includes the business community. So let's look at those problems going forward. I think that's all I have at this time. We may call you back up again. Are there any other commissioner questions?
I just wanted to touch on one quick thing I failed to mention. I work for a board. All of my direction comes from the board. So some of them are here tonight. We're always willing to listen. We always have been. So I understand that we have, as you said, an image problem. We try very hard not to have an image problem. We cannot control what people put out there on social media and TV and otherwise. And many times what we've experienced is the information they're putting out there is not correct. And that's why I put that into that email letter. Okay, solar. We've been accused of working on the Fort Gratiot solar project. Couldn't be farther from the truth, folks. I have not attended a single meeting at Fort Gratiot Township or any place else on any of the public hearings on that project. My board directed the staff a few years ago not to work on solar or wind projects, and so we haven't. That doesn't mean we don't occasionally get a call from one of them. We can't stop them from calling, right? But we are not actively working to site solar anywhere in St. Clair County. So I wanted to make that point. The data center project that you referenced, we did not bring that company to China Township. The township brought us into that project. John Golan did. We have an email to that effect in our records. People don't know that. They thought, oh, here's EDA trying to sneak this one in. I don't mean to be defensive, folks. I really don't. I'd rather have a conversation with you. That's not what happened. The reality is, when we got that email from John, we sent them a video of a program about data centers and about some of the concerns of data centers. We were like, whoa, 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 John, I think we need you to be aware of some of the concerns with data centers, including noise and things like that. We did try to counsel them to get more information on the project before they got excited about it. So these are things you wouldn't know that happen behind the scenes, okay? I just want you to know that. But we got accused, and that's fine. We can't stop people from saying things. But communication, you're right about that. I totally agree with you that we can do a better job of communicating with residents.
Okay, very good, Dan. A couple elaborations, and we'll move along. October 2019 Times Herald contained an article that from Jeff Bohm, Dan Casey. We were proudly showing solar companies around the area. At that time, I'm not sure anybody realized what was going to transpire. You had told me recently that you're not going to be working with them. It would become too controversial, and I respect that. The rest of the issues, I think we may be able to work through, and that's what this is all about at this point, to see what we can do. I do have one other question that constituents have brought up over and over. You are in the process of looking at acquiring or building a $3.2 million building along the riverfront, and that's beautiful, looks like a beautiful conception. Can you just elaborate, just briefly, how that's going to be paid for? Because again, we can't FOIA, so I know the community has asked that. It's a bit of a paradox how we're providing $300,000+ and the services you do, and then yet having that building going to be available to a nonprofit.
Yeah, so the building is intended to be a business incubator that we're going to move our 2 current incubators into. I know that.
Please.
That's the purpose of the building.
Come on, Mike.
The federal EDA contacted us about a grant opportunity a few years ago that would have paid an 80%, the federal government would pay 80%, we had to pay 20%. We went through an application process, it took a whole year. We were awarded $3.38 million. Then we went to the state and got a RAP grant, which is almost $3.2 million. So we have almost $7 million, $7.5 million, or $7 million from 2, a federal and a state grant to build the building. And then we have some other funding as well. There's no county funding in this project. And there's a pro forma that had to be created by the state, or for the state, to approve it. And in the pro forma, it shows that the revenue from the tenants in the building pay all of the operating costs of the building.
Okay, and if I wanted documentation on that, or the board does, is that something that could be provided to ascertain that no county or taxpayer money? Well, I'll take that back, because all the money is taxpayer money. You don't make a product per se, but
Yeah,
from the county.
That's true. So the federal money, obviously, all those documents are FOIAble, not to us, but we would provide them because it's all public record information. Same thing with the state grant.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that in the future. Any other commissioners have any questions for Mr. Casey?
I don't necessarily have one specifically for you, Dan, but I would like to hear from, and maybe Mr. Freed, because he's my city manager, but how do the local municipalities go about choosing businesses to come in? Like, what is the site plan process?
He's actually on my list, and if you think he can do it in 3+ minutes, I'll give you a little more time. Thank you, Dan. I'm sure we'll call you back up. Appreciate it. Mr. Jim Freed, if you would.
Good evening. I tell you what, I think what the state government did, usurping local zoning and local control over solar, is just horrific. It's the worst fear for folks who wake up one day and you've lost local control and a solar panel or a windmill ends up in your backyard. I think it was a gross government overreach, and I'm disappointed in the governor and the legislature for making that happen. Local control is the premise, is the foundation of local zoning and ordinances. It's so important that the Michigan State Constitution, we have 2 constitutions. We have the federal constitution, but we also have the state constitution. And people don't, well, everyone reads the federal constitution in school. Not a lot of people read the state constitution. It's very important. The state constitution puts the authority of land use and how land is zoned in the hands of local municipalities, not the county government, local municipalities, because they believe, and I believe that too, that the best form of government is those with the local controls, the most efficient, most oversight having local residents. Local townships and municipalities set their zoning maps and what can be approved and built there. And so it's very important that we work with the municipalities to make sure our zoning is the way you want it. You don't want big industry next to your house? Go to your local elected official, the township level, and say, rezone this so it's not getting built here. In the city of Port Huron, and in every municipality, a site plan review requires a public hearing before the planning commission. Nothing can get built until the local planning commissions appointed by the duly elected officials approve that site plan. So no one can sneak in here and build a solar plant or a big data center in your home, behind your home or behind your business without the local officials approving it, because that's the way our state constitution works. And then those protections are built in, not only in the state constitution, but in the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, which was recently amended in 2014 and 2018. So in the city of Port Huron, we work very well with the EDA. There is not a single development that gets proposed or I have the EDA staff, hey, we have a company that's looking at building an aerosol company. Would you be willing to site them into the industrial park? The industrial park is full. The number one complaint we have is we have no buildings. We have about 23 acres on one side, 8 acres on the other. We have a lot of site plan approval processes going right now for warehousing and storage and new manufacturing companies. The EDA's worked on all of that. But again, nothing gets built until the planning commission, which is appointed by the mayor and the duly elected council, just like in every other township, approves that site plan. Things that take into consideration, noise, screening, how it affects the adjacent property owners. So I think the misnomer we have, and I think in great part the gross government overreach of state government and usurping local control has fed this fear that things can just pop up in your backyard, when in fact our Constitution and the Michigan Planning Enabling Act already established those protections so that local residents have a voice in the process and local officials have the ability to approve or deny a project within their community. Outward, looking forward, it's data centers and solar panels today, but next 10 years it could be something completely different. And so we have to look at our land use and zoning to make sure that our zoning maps are updated and our zoning maps are reflective of the community for which they represent. That requires no planning commission meetings seem boring until something like this happens. And so paying attention to your local planning commission, paying attention to your master plan updates, that can help alleviate this mistrust in government, which is, I believe, rightfully so after what the state government did. You shouldn't trust government. And so I think we have the local controls, we have the local process. I think what we need to do, always have to do as local officials, is better educate the public on what those processes are. No one's looking out 5 years ago saying, oh, I should have been at the planning commission to help the zoning map get updated. Well, we need to educate the public on how they can have a role in that, how they can participate in that. In the city of Port Huron, we're undergoing our master plan review right now. A huge component of our master plan update is going to be public engagement and public input. What do you want to have next to your neighborhood? What do you want to have downtown? What do you want your community to look like in 10 years so that we can't have unwanted developments just pop up and try to come into our communities? And so I recognize the distrust in government. I think the EDA's got a bad rap because of some of the horrible things that the state government has done. But as the EDA executive board member, every concern you bring up, there's a completely solvable way to do it. We want transparencies. You want to request data from the EDA. There's not a single time an elected official in the city of Port Huron has requested information from the EDA that they didn't get. And so we should surely make that available to the Board of Commissioners. We hope that the board will take a seat so that you can be in those meetings and understand the work that the EDA does, but to provide that level of transparency. The elected officials are the direct connection to the electorate. And I think it's very important that the elected officials have a direct seat on the EDA board so you can sit in those board meetings, know what's going on, and relay that information to the people who put you in office. And so as an EDA board member, we fully support that. But there is a process in place for public engagement, public review. Nothing gets built without local approval. And this is also a key point. The local officials can slow roll the process. So if there's issues with the development, the planning commission doesn't have to approve it. They can slow roll that so the community's comfortable with it, or the changes they get made are into that site plan. And so there is a process in place. I think a lot of people don't know about it, and we can do a better job of educating the public on how we can protect their neighborhoods, protect their farms, and protect their churches and places of worship.
Thank you very much. Any commissioners have a question for Mr. Vreed? Okay. At this time, I'm going to open this to citizens' comments. We have quite a pile to go through, folks. We're going to try to limit it to 3 minutes. I have well over 30 different comment sheets here, so. Yes, yes. Yes.
Sincerely, respectfully interrupt. I apologize, but I think early on in this hearing, it is very important that we hear the points from municipalities such as mine, Wales Township, of where some of these problems are arising from. Before we get into workshop 2 or 3, before we're ever heard.
Okay, we will definitely do that, and I apologize that this is such a long meeting. We do need to be thorough. I'm going to ask something here if people will consider. Mr. Casey did an excellent job presenting what the EDA does. I know there's many folks here that wish to address what the EDA does. You can certainly do so if you wish. I brought a dinner, so I can eat if I have to. But what I'm asking is that if you have comments relating to issues that you see between the EDA and the community, that's what we're really looking for here. So I'm going to, Ms. Masters, you'll have a chance to speak shortly. I'd like to go down a couple people on the list at random, and then we'll engage, if you would. First, and 3 minutes, please, and if commissioners have any questions for each of the citizens, please ask them before they leave the podium. So first, I'll call Bill Wuber. I think I'm pronouncing that right, from Jetto. If you would, sir.
My name's William Webben. I'm a general manager of U.S. Ferrethane in the industrial park in Port Huron. When the EDA brought in Magna, I want to just point out things good and bad.
Yeah.
I have my disagreements with Dan, and I have my agreements. But one of the things when Dan brought in, I'm not an owner, so I'll make that clear. I'm a general manager. When they brought Magna in, we were very concerned. We heard the wages, but what I can tell you it did for the industrial park in my operation, we're getting new machines, we're being more competitive. We just signed a union contract for 6 years and gave over a $2 an hour raise to keep up with that. So when Dan made the comment at the beginning about plastic industry, I took major offense to that, because I'm part of that. But I do believe they've done good. I believe, Dan, they do need to be more transparent. But in general, I think it's something that this community needs. We're going to grow. We need, we need to build another 2. When they talked about the industrial park, we're the one that had the fire. We looked for every building possible. We're in the stages right now to build a 220,000 square foot warehouse in the city of Port Huron. So that's the help of the EDA. So I guess that's my stance on the EDA.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody have questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Mike Helferink? I will. 3 minutes, please, if you could, sir.
All right. Let's see, where do we want to start? There's so much here. All right. So you guys heard my story, my first interaction with Dan Casey and EDA 10 years ago with the hotel deal in Marine City. And you also heard him admit to a lot of his MO when he approaches these deals, how he approaches just the city manager. And what happens there is the city manager kind of keeps that under wraps. They don't really tell the rest of the board. I don't know why that is, but in Marine City, that absolutely didn't happen. Because what happened was Dan Casey was working with our TIFA board, much like he works with planning commissions, smaller boards under the elected boards that people, one, the meetings are usually at 4 o'clock like this one, so a lot of people can't make it. 2, they're not televised, and people just don't go to them because they just don't have time, too busy, So they don't know about the first stages of these deals. And that's what Dan Casey's MO is to take these deals to the lower boards and then have those lower boards approve these deals and then take it to the elected board with all the experts and all the great tax dollars that it's going to bring in, and then here comes the next thing. We gotta hurry and do this. We gotta hurry. If we don't go, we don't do it now, we're not gonna make this money. And that's how bad decisions are made. And that's how the bad decision was made on the hotel in Marine City. I live in Marine City. I jog by that parking lot every other day, sometimes every day. Not a lot of cars in that parking lot. It's currently for sale. It was a bad business decision. There's a lot of bad business decisions being made by Dan Casey and the EDA and Jeff Bone that have fell through. And you guys are gonna hear those as well. The amount of money that our TIFA board paid to the consultant that was working with Dan Casey was $5,000 a month for 2.5 years, $60,000 a year, $150,000 of Marine City's tax dollars went to a consultant to work on a private project that was supposed to be working on old City Hall restoration. I know Dave Vandenbosch knows that's true. None of this is misinformation. I have receipts on everything I've said. Bob Lepley can back me up. They had no clue that they weren't working for the City Hall. No clue at all. So what I would suggest is Jeff and Dan both got to go. Jeff's got to resign. Dan's got to be out of here. These guys are too ingrained into the political spectrum. It goes from Dan Lowers to the state to Lisa McLean on the federal level, and that's where these federal dollars are coming for his new home, his new little grand office. Lisa McLean. Kathy Burton, she was on Lisa McLean's staff. Kathy Burton, who's got the hotel grants in Marine City, and also the ARPA funds of $500,000. This is all connected, guys.
Thank you very much. Please hold applause. We'll be here till tomorrow. You've seen me shuffling the comment papers. What I'm trying to do is where I can identify people, I'm trying to pick people from each side so we go through this. Next, I'd like to call up Tom Verton.
Tom Verton, I live in St. Clair. First off, the hotel's not for sale, and the hotel's doing very well. It's profitable. Second off,
Mike, come on, hold it down, please. Hold it down. Mike, please.
Keep going.
can I?
Mike,
go on
please,
without being-
let's respect the meeting if we could, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
I understand that the board is seeking to stop the EDA from entering into confidential agreements at NDAs. As a business owner for 30 years, I had businesses out of state, overseas, and I would have never entered into any potential negotiation of buying a building or expanding without having MDAs and non-competes. The reason is, there's a lot of confidentiality with businesses. There's a lot of concerns about moving the location, competitive advantages, your employees. It's just normal business that you need to sign these things. We should have the confidence in the EDA that they will manage it and then communicate properly back to the board. And I think that's why they have such a large board, so people can be on their board to understand what they're trying to do and ask those questions, but yet keep it confidential. So I think, I think it's very difficult if you take away that from the EDA. You're really going to tie their hands, and this is from a business standpoint. Thank you.
Tom, if you would, any commissioners have a question for Tom?
I just got a statement.
Go ahead,
I'm a business
please.
owner myself, and I've been in business over 30 years, about 35 years now. The initial company had 100 employees. I'm just pretty much making a statement. I bought a manufacturing plant up north, and I wouldn't do it if it wasn't upfront and honest. And that's a private business owner. I made sure everything that I was doing was upfront with the community and everything. I didn't want any confidentiality, and I wouldn't do it now. I just, not part of my character. I just wanted to make a statement.
Okay. And I'm sorry, one quick question for you too, Tom. I'm going to ask this, Tom? I'm sorry, quick question. I'm going to ask this of several of the business owners because you have experience in this area. Would you give your product away for free? I mean, other than charitable things, would you give your product away for free?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay, let me ask you an easier question. If you contracted for garbage service, you put your can out at the curb, you'd expect it to be picked up, right? Okay, if you didn't contract for service, you would expect it wouldn't be picked up, correct?
I would expect if I didn't, it wouldn't get picked up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure, certainly.
You know, I think it's absolutely rude that you stopped funding, and I think that's acting as a dictator.
Please. Hey, hold it down. Hold it down. Yes.
From the EDA in their first quarter to get their attention.
Yes.
To me, that's not the right way to negotiate to get
Well,
something done.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that, Tom, sincerely, but I was the one that was elected. Will we all be here today talking if we hadn't done that? That's the question. So, all right, thank you. Anthony Farrelly, if you would, please.
I'm Anthony Farrell. I'm the pastor at Crossroads Community Church in China Township. I want to thank you all for your diligence in addressing this topic and this matter, and I've been encouraged with the leadership which I have seen. Regarding the EDA, I'm supportive of any economic development or initiatives or opportunities. So that is wonderful. Furthermore, I've met with Dan Casey in my office and have been appreciative of the conversation which he and I have had. My interest in this issue started September 16th, and this would reflect Robert Felitz's comments of concerns with local communities. It started back in September 16th when I became aware of a data mining center, which was at that time named Solstice Data, as it was newly labeled, coming in just south adjacent of the property of Crossroads Community Church. No one in my church or in the community surrounding us knew anything about this. There was no awareness, but on that day, September 16th, they were going to vote for a tax abatement for this data center. And we were shocked because voting for a tax abatement is the equivalent of approving funding or approving the entrance of this project. The facility would have been 75,000 square feet, approximately 1 3/4 of an acre, requiring an equivalent of electrical power to power 100,000 homes. The concerns were related to health impacts of electromagnetic radiation, noise levels, the impact of energy cost on the community, visual blight, just to name a very few of the issues. It was a shock to us as a township was voting on that abatement, which again I say felt like a de facto approval, and the proper protocols were not followed, were not in place to have community input or accountability. The data mining center has been withdrawn, their efforts to come into the community. Nonetheless, from my vantage point, these types of challenges where community and public interest are not being respected, are being overlooked and disregarded. So my strong concern is that for the gatekeepers of our community, that they would put in accountability in terms of the funds
Wrap
that
it
are
up, please.
used.
We're at 3
And
minutes.
so, thank you for listening to my comments.
Hold on just a question. Any commissioner questions for Pastor? Okay, I just have a question.
Sir.
I know that you originally reached out to me about this when it became apparent. And I remember our conversation very well. You said, well, I'm a pastor for this church. I have concerns. What I want to relay to the crowd is this gentleman was concerned if he should come out and talk to the community. He says, I'm a pastor. I said, a pastor is a leader. And he went and talked to his board, and the board concurred. And then he moved forward into this political realm, defending what he saw as an invasion of his community and a threat to his church. Now, that's what I'm talking about, for the passions and emotions that are going on here in the business. I understand the business viewpoint. I was a business person before I retired. But we're talking about this type of situation. You're going to hear that over and over tonight. We should all be able to work together on this. And what the pastor has said here, I want us to remember that going forward. Any other questions for the pastor?
No question, just another statement. What happened, and I was at that meeting also, and at the China Township, after that tax abatement was there, but then Dan Casey did show up at the Planning Commission. He was not part of the agenda, but proceeded to give a 45-minute presentation. Is that correct, Dan? Without being part? Okay. All right. I was told otherwise, but you weren't on the agenda, so.
Okay. Thank you very
Let me just add just real quick.
Very short.
When
Yep.
Dan came into my office, we had a great conversation. I'm just looking for more accountability, transparency. Dan made that step toward me, but I'm just addressing you as a
right.
county commissioner to move forward in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking tonight. Next, Kathy Verton, please, if you would. Please. Hold it down.
Well, let's clear up some misrepresentations on the Inn on Water Street. The EDA was very involved in that project. It sits on a parcel that was formerly an auto dealer and service center and was heavily polluted with fuel and oil that would ultimately end up in the river. We applied for a brownfield grant to clean the parcel, which happened, opened in 2018, a new 26-room boutique hotel with 4 residences on the 3rd floor. There was a CRP grant, there were abatements. People will tell you that we pay no tax. That's the abatement. Well, the county made out all right on that project. Previously, you were collecting $9,600 a year in taxes. You now collect $56,000 a year in taxes, which will go up when the abatement expires in 4 years. I would say that's a job well done. The EDA also assisted in funding Thumb Coast Theaters. I received this. Last Thursday, I received this message from, you hear from him a lot, Mike Hilfring, disgraced former Marine City Commissioner. He was removed from their board. He sent me, your little Stratford isn't gonna happen. We got Jeff out. Dan is now in process of being gone too by the recent county vote. May I suggest Port Austin, or better yet, Holland? Try a place that wants what you're selling. Well, Thumb Coast Theaters hosted 28,000 people last year. 40% of our patrons come from the county. So I would argue that residents and taxpayers in this county want what we're selling. I wouldn't pay as close attention to him as maybe you are. This whole Keep It Rural movement is spearheaded by some people who are very toxic. They lie about us repeatedly. The largest demographic in our county, the age is 60 and over. That's a sign of decline. You need to attract the 30 to 40 somethings here. And to do so requires opportunities to attract them. Not everybody wants to grow up to be a farmer now. There's anything wrong with it. Without that population growth, this is what's going to happen. Housing values will drop. Schools consolidate, we're seeing that. The tax base doesn't grow. Existing businesses can't find employees, which we're seeing. Even the hospitals close. They can't make it on geriatric medicine and Medicaid. They can't. You will be the folks that get blamed if you adopt this philosophy that we don't want to progress and we don't want any growth here. You have to do planned growth. I get it. It has to be measured. But please don't roll back the efforts of this EDA. They have had some great successes. And the Inn on Water Street, contrary to the Yahoo over there, is one of them.
Okay, Kathy, I'm sorry, before you walk away, if you would, please, any commissioners have any questions for Kathy Verton? Kathy, I just want to ask you in all sincerity, these are great comments, and I appreciate the tension in the room. Keeping with the topic of the workshop, do you see any issues with the relations of the EDA to the community? Is there anything you want to offer to the workshop's purposes? Is there any problems or issues with the EDA in the community? If you want to take a minute or so, I'd appreciate it.
I will tell you, I haven't been involved in all of the transactions that have taken place, so I don't have a solid answer to that. I know that what we were involved in, they were very transparent. They talked to our city officials. They talked to the county. They had to. We talked to MEDC to get this project done. I think there's a faction that likes attention, and they lie a lot. Eileen Tesh hosted a whole show with somebody I've never even met to tell the story of the Vertons. How does that even become commonplace?
Yeah.
There's a lot of lies out there
Kathy.
and mistruths. They need to,
Okay.
you need to seek the truth,
Yeah,
but you're not getting it.
These are issues, but they're not the issues of this workshop. So
That's what you just asked me. Is
Yeah.
there communication issues
Yeah.
within the community? Yes, there are.
with the EDA.
The wrong people have the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Hey, people, hey, Mike, come on. Mike, please. All right. Hey, this won't be tolerated. If you want to stay in the meeting, please be professional, okay? Everyone, we have a lot to do here still. Next, I'd like to call Liz Masters, please, if I could. Thank you, Liz, for patiently waiting. And I apologize to the group for the length of this meeting, but I'm very pleased to see there is so much interest on both sides. Liz, I know you and I talked earlier in the week. I don't know if you have a speech per se, but I have some questions, if that's okay.
I don't have a speech. First off, I want to thank everyone for their time. This is not, obviously, this is not easy for the public, nor is it easy for the elected that are looking at something. I would like to comment right now that I can see the technique. There is a dominance of time tonight, and that is unfortunate. I do understand the nature of it, but I would hope in the future that we don't see that we see definite more fairness. I don't take it out on you. I know that this board is trying to do some fact-finding, trying to make some good, solid decisions for the future. So I would like to make that comment that we did see an absolute time dominance, and I would like better fairness in the future. I do have a critical document that I would like to share at this time because it is sensitive. I am going to read that if you don't mind, Chair. Do I have that time? Sure. I'm not going to take an hour and 45 minutes.
No, we'll allow you a little bit more,
Okay.
but.
It won't take long at all. This is letterhead, Wales Township, January 9th, today, 2025, directed to Dan Casey, Director, St. Clair County Economic Development Alliance. To whom it may concern, this is a formal request by Wales Township through FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, Act 442 of 1976 for the following information. The last 4 years of audits for EDA of St. Clair County, including income amounts from membership fees of participating communities of the county, the last 5 years of annual budgets and budget reconciliation, any or all public and federal funding received documentation, any and all email correspondence, memo, communications, including phone conversation summaries mentioning Wales Township, a non-participating member, for the last 5 years by any and all of the St. Clair County EDA Board of Directors, staff, or members. The Freedom of Information Act reflected on the USDA, for instance, for example, .gov statement quotes, nonprofit institutions that receive grants and other financial assistance provided by federal agencies are subject to FOIA. And it goes into the detail that Wales Township is willing to pay these, so I'm going to officially file that to Dan.
Please hold your applause, please. Okay, thank you, Liz. I do have a couple questions, but if the board has any questions, any other commissioners, any questions for Liz Masters? Liz Masters, you are the Wales Township Supervisor, correct?
Yes, elected.
How long have you been in that position?
I'm going into my 8th year now.
Okay, so would it be fair to say the people must like what you're doing and you?
I would say so, going off of, I was at first at 2 elections, I was a Democrat in primarily a 98% district that was Republican. This time around, I am a Republican. I have made a choice. Yes, I would say that.
Is Wales Township a member of the EDA at this time?
Wales Township has never been a member of the EDA. I was warned by 2 previous supervisors that we do not participate, that the EDA services the eastern side of this county.
Okay, and what is your staff size in your township?
We consist of 5 elected board members, of course. We have 2 mandated deputies, the deputy clerk, deputy treasurer, so that makes 7 right there. We do have a few positions that are required, like the building inspectors, there's 3 of those. A zoning administrator, that's a shared position.
Okay.
We have an assessor, so we are definitely a skeleton crew. We each have
Okay,
our own.
all right, thank you. And the reason that I asked will be obvious shortly, if you bear with me. Your budget, are you balanced? Do you have red ink? Are you hurting to provide services that the people in your township want?
We've been solid for the last 16 years that I've been with the township. I was a trustee prior to being a supervisor.
Okay, so I'm guessing that if you're providing the services the residents want and your budget is solid, that you don't really court economic development. Okay, could you explain just briefly, if you would, please, the recent things that have been discovered in the last 6 months or so with the way the development has come to you? And
Yes, I guess I'll spare this. You say the last 6 months.
you can go farther, but we're looking at time, obviously. I'm sorry.
This has actually gone on for roughly the last 5 years. This was with marijuana processing and distribution plants back in 1819 as well. I guess, you know, I will say with the solar, it's become common that people associate Wales, the word Wales, with solar, industrial solar. There's a lot more industries out there. You mentioned that. And I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. They I don't want anyone assuming that it's Wales against solar. There's many more developments. There was a phone call that I received just recently, December 2nd. Someone had received a call or notification from Dan Casey. Dan Casey had notified them as director, explaining that there would be a news release from DTE that they are planning a mega data center site in Wales Township in 2025. They expected that that news release would be around the 12th of December, which I've not heard, but that's one of the incidents. And this is where Wales Township feels that, you know, every time we get back to our business, our planning, our zoning, tax season, everything that comes in, deciding fire contracts, roads, improvement, every time we turn around, there's another phone call. Look out, this is coming, a target on our back.
Was there an incident where you were signed up for some type of development database or something like that? You had mentioned to me.
I believe I handed that out to those packets.
Just short, briefly, if you could, for all of us.
We learned of that in December as well. Bob, we learned that, as Dan Casey said, the regional out of Detroit was mentioned that Wales Township was possibility for funding, grant funding for development, and it's in the form of a fast track. What I do want to clarify, not Wales Township, that was possibility of grant funding. A company, a development company, quite possibly could have been subject or for the grant itself. The idea of the grant itself is to fast track permitting, local zoning, and site plan reviews. So that is how to hurry up along through the whole process of local government.
In your township?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to ask this again, and I ask people to indulge. It seems like a ridiculous question, but I believe it's illustrative. If you contract for garbage service, you'd expect that can to be picked up, right?
Yes, we leave that up to our residents, but
Okay,
yes.
and if you don't contract for garbage service, you'd expect your can's going to be there. Likewise, if you're not a member of EDA, do you expect your community will be left alone as far as having offers, signing up for databases? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I expect it and I demand it.
Okay, thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate it. Any questions, commissioners?
Can I make one more comment real quick?
Real brief, please.
I just would like to draw attention to basically what you just said, what you expect, and I said I demand it. We're talking $300,000-$400,000 through the EDA, and we're hearing how important the EDA is. If any community out there would like their services, Wales Township doesn't object to that. If Marysville, Port Huron, if it's working out, that's a great relationship. The problem is that they're using county funds, that we are contributing, and that is Wales Township and other municipalities' funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I've heard that from other township supervisors also, which I find interesting. They are willing to fund at the township supervisor level for services they don't sign up for. So I appreciate that comment. Next, Patrick Pringle.
Thank you for your time tonight. I just wanted to step up in support of the EDA, local business here in town. We've been in business for 38 years. We've been a member of the EDA for more than 20 years. We had a manufacturing site on Water Street. We moved over to Lapeer back in 2009. That property that we bought was a contaminated site. And the EDA stepped in and helped us navigate that and get through that process. It worked out very, very well for us. We're very happy there. We then moved into the COVID timeframe. I could tell you, as a business owner, having somebody that was there for us, we were considered an essential business because we're medical devices. So we were operational during that time. The EDA was there to let us know what we could be doing, couldn't be doing, what we needed to provide for our staff. That was very, very valuable to us. I mean, the list can go on and on about how important it is to have a local group that is looking out for businesses that are active and trying to do things. The wage and benefit survey that Dan alluded to is very, very helpful for us to keep up with what's going on. I can go on and on that. So very much appreciate the time, and the EDA is doing fantastic work for us on there. So.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Any questions for the gentleman? Okay, thank you. Next, Sandra Tannehill, please, if you're here. Hi, Sandra. We talked earlier in the week. I don't know if you want to offer comments. You kind of said, just question me and that would work for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll just make a brief, because you know I can be long-winded too. I guess I'm a member of the anti-growth group that I want you all to know that I believe in growth where it's welcome. There's a clear discrepancy between the communication between EDA and city officials, we've heard it, and EDA and rural governments. The lack of communication is clear. Dan Casey's public radio interview a few days ago, I want to quote something that worries me. If they insist, meaning the county board, that they don't want us to sign NDAs, then we won't, but that's not going to change the fact that every project is still going to be confidential. So I'm asking you to proceed with caution. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Any questions for the person? Any board members? No. Okay. Question I just wanted to ask, your position, I know you're with Wales Township. What's
Correct.
your position?
Planning Commissioner,
And how long have you been doing that?
a little over a year.
And were you involved with the township before that?
Going to meetings. I'll introduce myself a little bit more. I'm also friends, and I did with Citizens for Local Choice, which is the solar group that went to Lansing and did the petition. I'm very active and friends with the people that did organize that.
Okay, so in the interest of time, rather than asking for elaboration, but you can if you need to, would you substantiate most or all of what the Supervisor Liz Masters said regarding the different events that she spoke of?
Yes, I agree 100% with everything that she has said.
Okay, any questions from the board? Thank you very much,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Next, Aaron Ladd.
Hi, so I live right here downtown Port Huron, and I run a company called Blue Water Code. And without the EDA's support through the Smart Zone and everything else that they have supported us through, I don't think that our company would have been able to get to the stage that we're in right now. It's one thing when you're starting a business, when you know your industry, you know the product that you can deliver, but the EDA actually helped us reach all of the other goals that we needed to actually launch. And because of that, we've helped like the Wrigley Center grow exponentially. We've helped Bella Bola, we've helped Senior Tequila, Bell River Winery, Waterkeep Games, and there's a lot of downtown businesses that we've supported. And I really don't want to see funding get cut from the EDA when that funding is something that's helped support my business.
Excellent, thank you very much. Congratulations on your business. How long have you been in business?
We're about to be 1 year old. So.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah. What exactly does your business do?
Well, we do social media marketing, we do website development, and then we also have developed an actual web app. So we're going to be launching that across the whole state where we can do an online ordering system and cut commission fees from like DoorDash, Grubhub, and other major.
That's enough. My oldest son bought Bell River Golf Course, and he just hired somebody very similar to you to assist the golf course.
Yeah, so we want to be able to bring the product to the whole community, to all the restaurants, and then they lose less commissions, and we help them all make more money. It's something that really the whole community benefits from, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the EDA.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Any questions? All right, thank you. Next, Scott Shigley, if you would.
My name is Scott Shigley. Excuse me. I'm the Vice President General Manager of Radio First, including WPHM, who I know you're going to be on tomorrow, Bob, so thanks for coming in. But I guess the comments I wanted to make is I think well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for your time. I mean, doing this is not an easy thing. And I think anytime you take over a leadership role, I know I took over for a guy that was at a radio station for 43 years. When I took over for him, I will tell you, I think that most people that take over leadership roles, I think it's important to take some time, you know, and look around. And you may have perceptions as to what you think a role of an entity is, but you may not know until you've had a chance to kind of look around and see, you know, for yourself. So I appreciate the fact that you're looking into it. You guys are certainly a big client. If I had a client at the radio station that was 40% of my billing, you can bet that I would have some really good conversations with them and try and figure it out. A couple of just quick points that I do want to make, though. I do think it's interesting. I think when it comes right back down to it, when you look at like what the EDA is trying to provide, all of these communities have the ability to say no. And I think about in terms of if there's an aggressive realtor in my neighborhood that came up to my house and said, hey, Scott, I can get you this amount of money. I have a buyer for your house right now. Would you like to sell it? I can say no. And I appreciate the fact that sometimes it's really difficult to find out where local decisions are made, but I think when I see the enthusiasm that people have in this room for either side of things, I think that you embrace that, you know, and I think it's really important for us to really look at what does the EDA do? What is their function in this, you know, in this community, and how does that help us? And when I hear people talk about their different townships and districts not benefiting directly from an EDA project, I doubt very much that your residents are prohibited from working at these places. They have the ability to do that. That's great. That's better for everything. I don't think you have one resident in any one of your districts that woke up today going, boy, I hope I don't do better in a year from now, 2 years from now, 6 years from now. And I think it's up to you guys really to look at it. And as far as image goes, Commissioner Felix, you brought this up. He's like, yeah, an image problem. Man, I'm telling you what, you'll find I'm in the image business, and you'll find that across any industry, any community. There's somebody out there that's going to say something, and it's, not always do you acknowledge it. We have it happen at the radio station quite frequently. And yes, I can't address nor will I address every single instance where somebody is just putting something out there to get a reaction. And so what I would expect from you guys is to be able to see through those things and not just dismiss somebody's question, but understand that, like, yeah, it has to be vetted at some point, and you do decide what is misrepresented in our communities by sitting up there and talking about stuff. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to call up Eric Krikorian, if I'm pronouncing that right. Eric, are you here? Eric Krikorian, I'm sorry, I took a stab at it. If you would, please, sir. Eric, I know we talked earlier in the week, too. You are the Greenwood Township Supervisor, correct? Yes. And at that time, I asked you if you'd like to just answer some questions or if you want to make a comment. Do you want to make a comment at this time?
Who asked the questions?
Okay, all right. You are the Greenwood Township Supervisor, as we said. How long have you been in that position?
I was a trustee prior for 8 years, and now I'm the new supervisor now.
Okay, so just voted in, and that's great, but you've been involved in the township for 8 years. Similar to what I asked Liz, is your budget balanced? Is there red ink all over? Are you providing for the citizens?
It is, yes.
Okay, and by and large, your citizens are rural and enjoying the rural life, I know?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had any, I'll call them unwanted advances or experience with the EDA you want to share?
We did. We've had 2 of them that we've had. The first one, we found out about it through DTE. They were bringing a data center. They wanted us to sign a non-disclosure. And we didn't know anything about the data center, who it was, or what it was that was going to come to our township.
Okay, and I know Commissioner Samasco talked to me earlier because at that point you called him up as he's your commissioner for your district. I think that you expressed that you didn't know quite what to do. You've been asking, as you say, to be signing an EDA and change your zoning. Is that true?
That is true.
And you had no idea what the company was?
No.
And since then, there's been some literature put out. What does it seem this company would be? And I believe it's North Point Development is wanting to develop it. Is it a Dollar Tree or something?
It's another data center. We don't know the company. From what I understand how it works is they will build the data center for whoever's looking at to get the data center.
And how big? Do you have any idea?
It was taken up. They had like 230 acres is what they had facilitated for that.
Wow. So this will substantially change the nature of your township.
Yes.
And are you a member of the EDA?
No, we're not.
Have you ever been, as far as your history?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, that was it. I think we covered it.
Anybody, commissioners, have any questions for Eric?
Talk to Eric often.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience staying this long. Charles Howell? You still here, Charles? All right, well, as the hour advances, people are leaving. And again, I apologize for the length of the meeting, but it is important. How about Jill Bartow? Are you still here?
Thank you all for all the hard work you're doing. Really appreciate it, and allowing us to speak tonight. I would like to start by saying that I'm not against progress and growth for St. Clair County. I guess I'm one of those that is being accused of it. I'd like to congratulate the EDA for their efforts in bringing appropriate cited businesses and programs to the area. With that being said, I do wish that the EDA would more carefully consider the consequences to the residents when citing massive industrial solar and battery facilities. I wrote this earlier before hearing when he said that you don't do solar. Awesome. Keep it up. If you can, help us to have this stuff cited properly and not in our backyards. The industrial facilities have no place adjacent to our homes and neighborhoods and will have a devastating effect on our lives, our ability to enjoy the property that we bought and paid for, our property values, the ability to sell our homes when we get to the point where we can't take these industrial solar facilities across the road behind us, all around us. We recently moved to this area from out of state and had no idea that these planned industrial solar plants were coming in. It's being said that they won't affect our property value. That's not true, because we wouldn't even have looked at the place had we known it was coming. I believe these solar plants are a blight to the area and will not positively affect the future of St. Clair County. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. John Furlano, please. John, are you still here? John Furlano? Lost another one then. How about Angela Dufresne? Are you still here?
Angela Dufresne from Fort Gratiot. I would also be one of those anti-growth group members. I'm not against growth. I've lived in Fort Gratiot for 16 years. There's a plan. There's a plan with how Fort Gratiot would grow. It's been in place since I moved there. I follow along with the updates to the master plans. There was no change before this whole solar field came in. Now, EDA knew about this in 2018. There was an article in the paper about it. They encouraged solar developers to come to St. Clair County. They did. That's just the fact of it. They did decide that they didn't want to deal with that anymore just a few years ago. So what he's saying, yes, that's exactly what I read. When they say that they speak with the communities, I'd like to just give you the definition of community. It's a group of people living in the same place. That is not one person. That is not the supervisor. What has happened in our township is our supervisor was on the board of directors for the EDA. She never shared this information. In fact, she told community members just a year ago that she had no idea about this project, which is not true at all. When she left, then Rob Crawford joined the board of the EDA. I don't understand why elected officials are on the board if what Mr. Dan Casey said at the last county commissioner meeting, that NDAs he signs covers him and the board members and the employees of the EDA. Well, that effectively would cover our supervisor, which would be why nobody in our community knew what was going on. So community is more than one person. You can't say a community agrees to something by just asking the supervisor. You can't do that. This needs to be advertised. I also take offense to his statements about, you know, the people that are coming to you and asking for help. You know, their business, I like what they do. I knew what they did. I didn't need him to provide this. I think there's a lot of people involved in this group that seem to think we don't know what we're talking about, like we're stupid or something. You know, we do know what we're talking about. I agree the EDA is integral to our community, but please, please, get the public involved, you know, the regular public.
Thank you, Angela. Anybody have any questions for Angela? Okay, thank you. Before I call the next person, Dan, can you confirm that as EDA executive, you have no control at this point over the solar companies? It's a simple yes or no, or a little elaboration.
It's a simple yes or no. Yes, that's correct, we don't.
Okay, thank you. I just want to offer a comment, two things very quickly, because it is getting late. As I'm sorting through this, it's informative. What I'm seeing is people in the rural areas aren't happy with the delivery of the service. People in the metropolitan areas and business owners are happy with the results of the EDA. So this may provide some direction to the board as we go forward. And then the other thing, what Angela just brought up, I know she's been involved with this for over a year, the government activists, economic development group, and which is not the truth in her case. But she's provided some thought as we go into the next meeting for solutions. The board members of your organization being supervisors in townships, and this is my own opinion, I believe gives a conflict of interest and may be contributing to this problem. So I'd just like the board to keep that in mind as we go forward in the next meeting looking at solutions. I just throw that out. Aaron Hewlett, if you would, please. Are you here? Dan Turk, are you here? Thank you, and thank you for your patience. It is getting late.
Thank you, everyone. Dan Turk, elected official for the Charter Township of China. Dan Casey, please stop spreading misinformation. We are not members of the EDA. We resigned our membership this past December, and I made the motion to do that. 6-1.
All right, come on, gentlemen, please continue, please continue.
China Township Board of Trustees dropped the EDA membership because the Board of Directors of the EDA and Dan Casey do not respect the zoning of China Township or our master plan. When it comes to some of these folks coming up here and saying communities have the right to say no, that's not necessarily true. When you're preying on unsophisticated rural townships that don't have ordinances for everything, you become prey. When you bring a big company in, you don't have an ordinance, let's say for a data center, guess what? You can't say no. It's coming. Anti-growth. Well, I don't think any of us are really for anti-growth. We want an EDA. We just don't want this EDA. We want an EDA that's ran by the County Board of Commissioners instead of a Board of Directors. If you're dealing with public funds, it needs to be FOIA. It needs to be looked into. We can pull that information when you're dealing with public funds. Just those statements of anti-growth and misinformation tells me that this current EDA is unwilling to change. Just because the fact that you're run by a Board of Directors, eventually you will start to come back to the same EDA that we see today. And that's the truth. When it comes to the China Township Data Center, you can throw John Golan underneath the bus a little bit, but it was you and Christie that was in front of my board table dancing on how good this offer could be for China Township. Well, knowing well and good, it just wasn't next to Pastor Anthony's church. It was next to the Pine River Elementary Playground. You mean to tell me that your moral compass told you that this was the best place in St. Clair County to put those EMFs next to kids? Granted, it was zoned industrial, but you could have found another site in St. Clair County and say, listen, guys, this isn't quite the place for it. Your moral compass would have told you that. You guys have no ethics. It's terrible. I think I pretty much touched base on pretty much everything. When it came to the 26-mile thing, one last thing. Mr. Casey, you listed a piece of property on 26 Mile Road, you can't say you didn't, that had individual ownership that was not conjoined, and you listed it as industrial available, and it was not zoned industrial in our township. And you did that. I asked you to remove the ad, you never did. It took a board of trustees to ask you to remove it. You have no ethics.
Yeah, Dan.
Thank you, folks. And one last thing for the lady that feels that farms are toxic. Next time you put a fork to your mouth, I want you to know where it came from.
Okay, hey, Dan, hey. Oh, Dan, I'm sorry. Yeah, quick question. That's all right. What's your position in the township?
Trustee, I've been a board trustee for 8 years and also the clerk of the township.
Okay, please, hold it down, please. Dan, your township, China Township, is your budget balanced? Do you have?
Balanced budget, we got a surplus, we're not hurting for anything.
Okay.
And I tell you what, if a project was to come into China Township today, we would not be able to trust this EDA to handle it. Plain and simple.
Okay, but I'm asking, you are not necessarily soliciting economic development to sustain the services?
No.
Okay. Any other commissioners have questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Please, hold it down. We're trying to move along. Kevin Glass, are you here? Thank you, sir, if you would. Kevin, I know we talked earlier in the week, too. Can you tell the audience and the board what your position is and involvement with which township?
Wells Township. For 3 years, Planning Commission, the last 2 will be 3 in next January. I've been the chairman of Planning Commission and a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I think it needs to be asked. There's a lot of passion in this room, a lot of emotions. We've already heard from Liz Masters, the township supervisor. We heard from Sandra Tannehill, Planning Commission member. You obviously are in that same group. People are going to want to say, it's personality. A lot of this is personal. We just don't like Dan. He hasn't done those things. He's a nice guy. I mean, I enjoy talking to him. So let me ask you just this question, just for thought. Do you think, in your opinion, is it personality, just personality and image, or is there actual factual basis and issues with the EDA's relationship to your township?
I'm standing here tonight because there is a few issues, but I want to add to that I applaud the EDA and what I heard tonight. Business owner for 18 years, I had 60 suppliers, I managed across the board, but mistakes were made, and as a business decision, a military contract said, you shouldn't have taken this on, and I talked to my few members on the board and some of the suppliers and said we made a mistake. So there's a poison pill out there called solar, wind, and tens of hundreds of thousands of people that are very passionate about everything you've heard tonight. No offense to the EDA, but it's a bad business decision to jump into that poison well and think that you're not going to hear some things back if, with NDAs, I'm not sure, so I would at least give them the chance to say, did they have anything to do with VIP and Detroit Industrial Organization in suggesting the siting or how that might have happened in Wells Township or any other, or a grant for $1.6 million to place it there? I was shocked. Who is EDA? Now that I know who they are, we should all be grateful for what they've done for all of us, including jobs. I understand that, but I know when to back off and look for a parachute. And that would be, at this point, not only transparency, but do we really want to be, as an ADA member or the board, to represent potential customers or real estate people and say, we want to be involved with siting solar in these townships that aren't part of EDA. That is not working with your community.
Okay.
So I would like to at least say that. Sorry.
That's okay. And then are you aware with your history with the township, has your board ever gone out and said to the EDA, we'd like some business? I know you're not a member. I mean, anything like that?
No, I mean, we are a small township.
Okay.
3,200 people, we put a Dollar General in on the corner, and that took some ways to do that. We want to stay non-industrialized, but we're still open to some suggestions. We, on the Planning Commission, are working on a master plan, and that's part of it. Okay. We don't have a lot of industry, and we don't want to completely desecrate our agricultural land and be forced to rezone for industrial. We're not going to do it.
Okay, and now my ridiculous question, if you'll indulge me. If you contract for garbage service, you'd expect that can to be picked up.
Of course.
And if you didn't contract, you'd expect that it'd still be sitting there.
Of course.
So would your expectation be that if you didn't contract for the EDA, they kind of leave you alone and not come forth. And he has reasons, he explained why he did. But what's your expectation?
I would think, yes, they should.
Hey, please hold it down.
You're by the microphone.
Yeah, if you would, please.
I would like to finish, but I would say that not only would we not want them to do our business, but to go beyond that, if they think anything's close to us, reach out to the community, and we wouldn't be sitting here today with the reduction or potential cancellation of funds if they didn't touch that poison pill. That's why most of us are here, including data centers and everything else. But this is a disease that's coming out there, and there's hundreds of thousands of people, not just a few residents of Fort Huron there, against that definitely are passionate, not just non-growth people. There's always a couple.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Janice Mueller, please. Are you here?
Good evening. My name is Janice Mueller. I'm the Regional Director for the Michigan Small Business Development Center. We work with the EDA quite extensively as one of their key partners, and I have worked in the economic development field for 17 years. In Michigan for 7, in North Carolina for 10, for 2 in Arizona. I understand Dan's world. It's a higher level than my world because I work with small business. We recognize the need for big projects. We recognize the need and his ability to deliver big, little work retention, workforce development. He is covering all of it. He is looking at all business, big, small. In the economic world, confidentiality is paramount. It is crucial to protect the sensitive business information. Could be investment plans, proprietary technology, expansion strategies, insurance. You need to make sure that organizations and stakeholders have that trust. Dan has to have that confidentiality. When I am working with Joe's coffee shop on the corner, we have confidentiality. We cannot share to our funders who exactly we're working with. We can say we're working with a coffee shop in St. Clair County that's having this issue, but we can never identify who they are. That is paramount to our success. A business needs to have that confidentiality. It's taken very seriously. Our organization is unfoilable. We are funded by federal dollars matched with state. It cannot be broken. I can be fired. Shannon, who works for me, can be fired. That confidentiality is paramount. We need the businesses and the investors to feel comfortable sharing with us. And as Dan said, when it's time for public disclosure, that is when he can share. So I wanted to clarify that from my perspective. I'm a business person. I work with businesses every single day. I look at their financials, and yes, we're balanced to the penny. A business has to have people behind it. They don't always have the money in the bank to hire a $60,000 consultant. They don't always have the person that knows the answers. That's why the collaboration works, because we all work together. Dan says, hey, there's a grocery store thinking of coming into downtown Port Huron. We're a food desert. There's this old building. So we all get together and bring together MEDC, state funding, federal funding, brownfield, to develop it so there is a grocery store downtown. That is what the economic development does. As a business person.
You need to wrap it up.
Janice,
I'm working
sorry.
on it.
Yeah, you're at your 3 minutes.
6,300 jobs, $3 billion in investment over 10 years. If you put in about an average of $300,000 a year, that's quite a return on investment. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Hold on just a minute, if you would. Any questions from the board? Yeah. I'm sorry, just a couple quick questions. Obviously, you have a lot of experience, and I appreciate that. So Dan's product, or the EDA's product, that's a good product in your estimate?
Absolutely. One of our chief partners ranked highest in the state for the region.
Okay.
We have the best economic development region in the state of Michigan.
Okay.
Bar none.
Now, you've heard several members here and concerns and from the community. Do you see any signs of any potential problems with the way it's being delivered to those communities with what you've heard tonight? Anything you want to share about that?
I think where the problem is Dan is relaying to the people in charge, because he can't go talk to every single member of every board. He's got to go to the person at top. Same way if Ford is entering into an agreement, and it's a large agreement that's going to impact their national strategy, they're going to go to the CEO. So he goes to the head of whatever that board is. That board member is the one that has to disseminate the information as appropriate based on whatever confidentiality rules that are there.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question?
Another one?
So the problem I'm running into is I have to leave soon, so can I give my public statement sometime soon?
Okay, hold on. Is there any other questions for,
I got a question for Gary Fletcher, because you got this notice from Elizabeth.
I'm sorry, are we set with Janice?
No, but it had to do with what you just said.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And according to what Liz Master had put forward to us, Freedom of Information Act from 1976, would you please verify, not today, that she says that they're not foiable, even though they're getting federal funds and federal grants? According to Liz Masters, that they are foiable. Just check on it when you can.
I was talking our organization, the Michigan SBDC, which is part of the Small Business Administration, federally funded. That is a mandate. It is legislated, unfoilable. I don't know about Dan's situation. He addressed that earlier. If you need to have him re-clarify, that would be my statement.
Thank you very much.
Set? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Would the board like to indulge Tyler and let him go ahead? There's an awful lot of people here. Is that okay?
Tyler shared with me that his dad's downstairs having some kind of emergency and that he really wanted to give a statement.
Okay, Tyler, if you would, go ahead. Please take the podium.
So I just wanted to speak about a few things. So I want to state one thing. I understand the solar project has nothing to do with the EDA. So I just want to specify, because my topic's going to be about solar. Number two, I wanted to state that I'm going to ignore the issue of, you know, local versus national government or state government for now. I'm going to put that aside. I think the goal is to be better informed as much as we can. So I did some detective work. I called Venice Township, and I asked them about a lot of things about their solar project. I talked to one of the people there. They told me that it had little to no effect on their property values. They said that they were able to sell houses across the street. It didn't seem to affect them that much. I talked to them about noise, and they said that it was within the agreement. It didn't break the agreement, and that it was annoying, but it wasn't damaging to health. I talked to them about wildlife, and they said that wasn't as a concern because the windmills are so, I'm sorry, the solar farm are so tall that deers can just move underneath them. You know, I talked about flooding, and I talked to the flood commissioner of Venice Township, and he told me that he didn't have any issues with flooding regarding the solar farms, not that he knew. I did talk to a leader underneath him that said, because this guy was a new incoming flood commissioner, the old commissioner lost his re-election, and so he didn't have any knowledge of the flooding before he got elected. But the person I spoke to, the lady I spoke to, said that she didn't run into any major issues with flooding. There was some minor issues involving a home, but nothing on a massive grand scale. And I also talked to her about water pollution, and she and everyone I talked to denied that. They didn't know, they didn't hear that issue. These were the people of Venice Township. This is in Shiawassee County. I know that a lot of people who are concerned about Fort Gratiot Township often use Shiawassee County, Venice Township, as a negative example of what could happen to Fort Gratiot Township. However, based on the people that I talked to, that I didn't run into the only thing that, there's two things that I understood was the primary complaint. The first was that, yes, the noise is annoying, But it's not life-threatening, it won't damage your hearing, but yeah, it can be described as a nuisance because it is annoying. And second is that they didn't like the fact, because they like looking at their, rural landscapes or farmland, and sometimes they don't like the sight of it, like for taking pictures and stuff, and.
Please hold it down. Come on, let
So
them finish.
I just thought, that's what they told me. I'm not going to, I'm not going to comment on the looks of it. I will just say that's what I heard from the, okay.
Thank you, Tyler. Take care of your father. Randall Fernandez, please, if you're here. Let's hold it down in the audience, please. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. Randall Fernandez, City Manager of Marysville, and I'm also on the Economic Development Executive Board. So I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said. First, I want to welcome all of you. You were either newly elected, I know most of you, and the ones that I don't, like yourself, Mr. Felix, who I met tonight. Reasonable people can come to.
Please hold it down in the audience. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hopefully, you hit it on the head already. It appears that cities like mine definitely want to keep the model that we currently have, the organization as it is. That does not mean that we will not change. I think on Dan's last slide, we provided some of the changes. You have our attention. At least you have mine as the executive board. You have my attention, okay? Adapt or die, right? Moneyball, adapt or die. We need to adapt. You are a major stakeholder for us. So I'm sure the EDA Executive Committee that's here tonight and the team is listening to all the comments for and against. Not going to mention names or anything like that. Everybody has the right to their opinion. But we are better together. The model that we have now, with what hopefully your next meeting is, right? We've got to get to a resolution. We've got to get to a resolution. Many people, it appears in this room, and maybe yourselves, do not have complete trust in the EDA. And I think that's what the EDA needs to work on, not only you, but the people in this audience, okay? That will take more than a day, that will take more than a month, but we must earn your trust. You're newly elected. You ran on a different, on your positions, whatever. We always need to earn your trust every day, just like I and my mayor and council need to do with our residents. So some of these things that were mentioned tonight, I cannot personally just blow them off. I have to take a step back, and I hope all of you do, and listen to both sides of the issue. And it definitely appears that from a township side, much different than my side or Port Huron side. Having said that, by the third meeting, we need to come to a resolution. 3 people's lives in the front row are affected by your decision. Dan's team is my team. Therefore, Gratiot's team. Everybody that's a member, they're on the team. So I take those lives very seriously. I may not be getting rid of them, but I am in a way. So I have to make sure you vote. We need you. There's no doubt that we need you. But we do need to make changes, and the EDA will make the changes that we can make. We will make the changes that we can make. Might not be all of them, but we are listening to you. And I appreciate you putting this together because I've learned a lot tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, any questions from the commissioners?
Just a statement. Thank you. I appreciate your perception and where we're going. And EDA has a lot of tools in their toolbox. Potentially we can do it in-house if we go forward and we decide we can't work together. I'd rather not have to have another toolbox. So hopefully we can get to where we can work together. And a resolution, I think it potentially might be a contract, but however we get there, hopefully we can for the best interest. District 6 first, because that's who I represent.
Agreed. And what I learned tonight, I spent a lot of time with Bob from Port Huron Township and George and others from Fort Gratiot because they're on the members and whatever. And I don't know Masters as well and Greenwood Township people, and I'm hearing their perspective. And again, I am listening, and I trust you cannot be on the executive board and not listen to what the statements are made tonight. Okay? We need to get this to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments very much. Chris Bartow, are you here? Chris Bartow?
Thank you for allowing us to speak today, and thank you so much for representing all of us. I'm one of the folks characterized as the anti-growth group. Would I like to live the rest of my life in our neighborhood as it is? Absolutely. But I'm not stupid. I know that growth happens. What should happen is appropriate growth, not a huge industrial solar facility surrounding our rural neighborhood. Yes, I said neighborhood. This project is cited to go on agricultural land, but there are hundreds of us that live in this area. This is our neighborhood. We need transparency and a look at conflict of interest. This is where we live. I want St. Clair County to grow and thrive for all its residents. Although the EDA is not involved in any way with Portside Solar, I would like to hope everyone in the entire county would be concerned with something this large that could affect the entire county. Am I an important person in St. Clair County? No, I'm not. I'm not a business owner. I don't sit on boards or committees. I'm one of the crazy animal rescue people that doesn't make money. I throw my money out the window taking care of animals. I'm someone who worked hard her entire life. We bought our forever farm in the middle of what could be a huge industrial plant. I believe there should be transparency for what happens in St. Clair County, even for those of us county folks. We are zoned agricultural, residential, suburban farm, agricultural. We are not zoned industrial. The people of St. Clair County need to know about a project of this size a lot sooner. I'm someone who would never live in a subdivision. I have nothing against people who live in subdivisions. I would never, never, never choose to live in the middle of an industrial solar facility. I love St. Clair County, and I hope for the best growth for the county, and I hope actually that the EDA, on some level, if they could get involved with this, it doesn't sound like they can, but thank you again, you all, for caring about us people out in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. Thank you very much. Quick comment again before I call the next person. I think we're starting to see rural, city, maybe a divide. I'd ask everybody to consider this board has a responsibility for over 160,000 people in this county. I know every commissioner is aware of that. There's 32 different municipalities. That's a real juggling act, and we're going to try to do the best that we can. And that people that came tonight, I appreciate everybody's input. At this point, I still have a stack, and I've seen a lot of people leave. I'm just going to try. Can I see a show of hands who still wants to speak and feels they have something to add? Okay, I just see a few people. If I could, gentlemen back in the gray, if you would, and I'm sorry, I don't know if you're pro-EDA or whatever you want to call it, but if you want to take a moment, I'd appreciate it. Yes, sir, what do you have? Oh, thank you. All right. Sean Treadway, very good. I didn't recognize you with your hat there, Sean. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes, sir.
So I pulled the 2023 little color glossy brochure from the EDA. Income is roughly $1.5 million, $458,456 in public funds. I'm so glad we got to hear from Quentin Bishop and Mr. Randall Fernandez tonight. Both taxpayer-funded employees by their respective cities. So that's interesting. Do their citizens all know that they're on the executive board, and are they voted in by their citizens since they're also members? Just a quick question. I'm not for or against the EDA. What I'm against is corporate handouts, and when you think about the $300,000 or actually $458,456 of taxpayer money that goes into the EDA each year. You look at the members that are on the committees, you look at the members that are on the executive board, it's pretty much a who's who of already paid taxpayer employees. You know, Marine City, Marysville, Port Huron, St. Clair, Yale, Clay, so on and so forth. So we're, you know, pretty much getting, anybody that's a member that's part of a city or municipality is getting double dipped, you know, the citizens. So just a thought, you know, keep the EDA going. One of the best things, you're such a great and wonderful business, and thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for putting it out. I'm sorry if 3 people lose their job, but it's not my responsibility for private employees to have jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions for Sean? Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience care to speak? Go ahead. Robert Montgomery, I believe.
Good evening. When I originally came tonight, I did not intend to speak. Fort Gratiot Township is a member of the EDA. Our previous supervisor was on the board of the EDA. I had to do some research myself to get an understanding of why that is and how that works. Everybody that's a member of the EDA is on the board of the EDA. There is a separate executive committee, but everybody that's a member of the EDA is on the board of the EDA. You have a seat at the table. So that's at least that's my understanding. Secondly, it seems to me that there's the biggest issue here that I'm hearing, at least from the Board of Commissioners, is there's a transparency issue. The issue with transparency and with the NDAs, signing non-disclosure agreements. Obviously, as public servants and people in the community, we expect to and want to be as transparent as we possibly can. But you have to remember that, I guess I asked you the question, are you willing to be transparent with everything that the County Board of Commission does? Are you willing to be transparent on every single issue? Now, I expect you would say yes. You're gonna nod your head yes. But at the meeting about, I don't know, 2 meetings ago when I was here, you folks went into closed session. I understand why you went into closed session, because it was to talk with the lawyers and stuff. Why are you going into closed session if you want to be so transparent? I'm not against closed session. I understand why they exist as a supervisor of the township, whether it's for legal advice, contract negotiations, and so on. But I don't think you're intending to do your legal battles out here in front of the public. That's not transparent, right? You're not intending to negotiate your union contracts out here in front of the public. Like, I understand that there's a divide, right? The NDA agreements, I think, from what I understand, and I to this day, I've never spoken with Dan Casey, never met the man. This is the first time I've ever seen him. We've never had a conversation. He did leave me a voicemail inviting me to be a member of the EDA. But I haven't been there yet. And Bob, you had made a mention of, you had asked a couple times if people's budget was solid, and if our budget's solid in Fort Gratiot, you know, we have a $15 million budget, it is solid. But we still look for growth. We still look for the community to benefit, to move forward, right? I mean, I don't tell Chick-fil-A not to come because it's not gonna be a benefit to the community, you know? We're still attempting to move forward. And I guess the only thing I will say too is I think that a lot of this has to do with the solar project. That was done well before I got there. Unfortunately, there's nothing that I have to say or do about that. You know, we have an agreement in place. But I think that we're going to see these data centers are only going to become more popular. I believe on the news the other day, they said there was $20 billion or $20 billion that's coming from Dubai for data centers Trump announced. So I think this is going to be an ongoing issue. But I don't know if it's necessarily all to blame on the EDA. I feel like, and again, I have never spoken with Dan Casey in my life, but from what I'm being told by other people, that the EDA has a very good benefit to the community at large and to St. Clair County. And I think everybody's somewhat indirectly a member of the EDA because the county participates, so the EDA kind of represents the county at large.
Thank you. Any commissioners have a question for Mr. Montgomery? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Sandra Richardson, would you like to come up, please?
Sandra Richardson, Fort Gratiot Township. I just very briefly, I saw it in print, and I do find it disgusting that someone would consider us, anyone, without knowing the individual, an anti-growth group. So I would suggest you take the time to get to know your other residents and before you label people. And I also, being a Fort Gratiot resident, I've seen how government works, and it's frightening. And for the gentleman that spoke on the entirety of how everything has a process and a planning commission has to go through and agree to put something into a community. That's not true, because that did not happen that way in our township. The Planning Commission completely turned down the huge project for solar, and the Board of Trustees overrode everything that the Planning Commission said in its entirety. So don't assume you know how each township works when you're proposing anything to a group of people. The other thing that I would like to say, being from Fort Gratiot, if I was to go ahead and propose to put a factory in my 40-acre parcel and ask for silence on it and to have an NDA, when I went in front of my planning board, it wouldn't be considered. There's no silence for individuals that want to put in a business. There shouldn't be any silence, because like I told our township supervisor when we entertained solar, if you're so proud about it, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the growth in our community. So transparency is important. And I heard another comment today on not catering to people on Medicare and people also in geriatric medicine in their 60s. What I'm saying is, we are a community. We all have a lot to offer, and age has no bearing on what our opinions have to offer our community or to suggest. So I, with respect, appreciate everything this board is looking into, and no one should hide what they're bringing into a community. I don't care how important your project is or how much money is behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Sandra from the commissioners? Thank you, Sandra. And again, real quick, people are saying that I know some of these people. It's not because of Facebook and because they are anti-growth. It's because I've gone to township meetings. I started in August and attended township meetings all over this county, and I intend to keep doing so. Once you discover their people and not just numbers, then maybe you can relate to them a little bit better and what their concerns are. So I appreciate these people coming forward and the people that I do know. Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead, in the sweater there. Get to you next, Vance.
A little unfair that
I'm sorry, your name and where you're from?
Schroeder, I'm from North Street, Michigan.
Thank you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Born and raised in the beautiful little tiny community of North Street, Michigan.
Go ahead, Liz.
Which will be poisoned by your little solar projects, people, just so you know, okay? Anybody that has any education and has worked at Emory University and educated down by an institution as such, kind of has the knowledge, and also working with the Center for Disease Control and designing the first health risk appraisal in America, sir. So to call me, what were we called? Non-progressive or something like that. I take a big offense to that. I'm not saying the things that you have done haven't been wonderful for some of the small businesses. Congratulations, you took 1 hour and 45 minutes selling us on this. That concerns me when someone has to sell themselves so hard. But let me tell you, I didn't bring all my speeches that I typically do. The World Health Organization, in case y'all folks haven't been educated to some of these things, the World Health Organization says if you live anywhere near a solar farm, move. So that would include places like Stony Creek. That would include places like Fort Gratiot School, which, once again, I haven't talked about the negative psychological effects of solar panels. One of them is learning disabilities. Can you imagine? Has Port Huron area schools been informed of this? I don't think so. I know I bet they haven't, because their learning disabilities will go out the roof if none of you folks are aware of these types of things. And I'd be glad to educate any of you people a little more, because I think some of you do need that. And I represent a rural community. After coming back from Atlanta, Georgia, owning a company called American Wellness Systems, one of the most proactive, preventive companies in America, designing programs for Coca-Cola, the Teamsters Union, and I could go on and on. I'd be glad to meet with you sometime. So anyhow, I also sustained a $5 million grant when I moved back here, because I was homesick for this beautiful little community and these great lakes. But if this solar comes through, are you aware that our lakes will be poisoned? We won't be fishing there. We won't be swimming. I don't want to boat or sail on a lake that's poisoned. And I would surely hope that you wouldn't. And I'm going to suggest and really encourage you all to do the research that the WHO says, the World Health Organization, the National Institute of Health, PubMed, and any other institute that is so against this, it's not funny. I could go on, but it's late because we were kind of, you know, our time was taken away from us. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to make some comments? Vance, go ahead.
Vance Richardson, Fort Gratiot. Just very briefly, you've touched on some very key points with the EPA. Number one, we are not anti-growth groups out here speaking our rattling way. And yes, there's misinformation. Yes, there's things that are wrong. But when I sat out there and listened to 300 people talk for 4 or 5 hours, and another meeting at the township, another 300 people asking the township to reconsider something. You know what? The citizens do the very, very best they can to be knowledgeable about the situations. And to read a letter that just states that there's people that are going to be from an anti-growth group that are wrong, that have misconceptions, I expect more, quite honestly, a lot more professionally. The second thing I'd like to comment on is this NDA situation. It's sometimes used incorrectly, and that's the problem you have. And now you've got a major distrust of the EPA. And you can take all the good things they've done for the township, but now they're not trusted. Put away the NDAs. You don't need those. You can have an honest organization that can be respectful and get things done without running around signing NDAs like all our farmers have now, hidden little leases, all the townships with the EPA and their NDAs, and yet the supervisors come back to the township and sneak things under, like the ordinances that they did, and read about it when they passed, what comments were made. None, because they slipped it right under the door. So NDAs, yeah, you better take a serious look at those. EPA, yes, there's some major changes. And if you don't recognize that, then you might want to rethink your situation. The residents need to know what's going on as well. And the townships, it's critical the townships be a part of this. You talk about a partnership. Okay, let's make it a partnership. Let's not make it hide and seek.
Thank you. Any questions for Vance? Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from the audience at this time? I think everybody's gotten hungry. Any other comments from the audience? Go ahead, sir. Come on up. All right.
Clyde Township.
Thank you.
We talked before. One of the things that's being overlooked is the fact that we're talking about grant money. Grant money is tax money. Grant money used to be yours until you turned it into the government. And then they decided to do what they want with it. And as long as they have the control of the money, you don't have control of your lives. And it's going to be that way, and it'll continue to be that way as long as we don't watch what they're doing. And quite frankly, being somebody that's 75 years old, there was a time when I actually believed that the government did the best work for the people. But as time goes by, I'm proved day after day that that's not true. And with that situation, we should look at if there's 300,000 sitting out there and it's money to be spent, why? How many times have you talked to somebody that's an administrator that says, our fiscal budget is such and such, but we've only spent so-and-so, so if we don't spend the rest, then we won't get the same amount next year. Obviously, you didn't need it this year,
So why are you gonna need it next year? Well, it's the way we do things, and it's not right. It's not ethical. And we need to look at money that's being, I mean, when we were talking about COVID, and there were COVID funds that were going to save the world, and they ended up being a new football field, or a gate, or an entryway to a business. That's money misspent. It was misspent because it was readily available and it wasn't monitored. So, the point being, we have way too much money that the government owns. It's your money. Don't let them play with it. Make them get something for your value. I mean, how many times have you spent your money, or paid your taxes on April the 15th and said, that was a good deal? Never was, never will be. Unless we make them accountable for it. And by the way, what was it, 300 billion that Joe sent over to Ukraine yesterday? 300 billion. We used to say millions. Now it's billions. It's just not. It's your money. We should keep track of it and make people accountable for the use of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to speak from the audience? Anybody else like to speak from the audience? Any commissioners have any comments or closing comments? Anyone at all? Okay. Go ahead.
Fantastic start. I think concerns have been brought up, and I think we're going to get them addressed, hopefully quicker rather than later.
And I do have some emails from people both pro and, I would say pro and con, but that's not accurate. That seems inappropriate anymore, actually. But I'm going to hold off reading them. They were all sent to the board. They're available to the board. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read them tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming. As you can see, this is a passionate subject. It's affecting a lot of people. I ask all the commissioners up here to consider all of this carefully. I know I will. At the January 16th board meeting, I will be attempting with the board to schedule the second workshop in which I hope we will be able to discuss potential solutions and ideas. And I will ask the board's indulgence and agreement at that time. But for tonight, thank you very much, everybody, for coming and for your patience. The hour is late. Do I have a motion for an adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much.